This is the
It's
situation.
after 6 o'clock. How are you doing? Welcome to Tuesday. This is the 19th day of January 2021. And today we have an extra person, but let's begin by saying hello to you all. Dr. Mercy.
Eric, good morning.
Habari yako daktari.
Happy New Year.
Nimekuona nikapona.
Amen.
Nilikuwa nasikia hapa. Lakini vile nimekuona daktari. Sasa
Ile
nasikia
kazi
ni
ya
kama-
daktari.
Nimesikia ni kazi ya daktari. Oh, okay.
Healing.
Very good. How are you?
Very well,
Happy
thank
New
you.
Year.
Happy New Year to everyone.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'm happy to be back here.
Yes. Happy to host you again. Our guest host for today is Dr. Mercy Korir. Hiya. Ndu.
That's how you do, ba?
Hujambo.
Just like that.
Oh,
You just told me because you've
Jambo.
seen somebody. Don't worry. Tomorrow is coming. I will still be here.
No, you know you have to behave that way. Whenever a guest comes, you make the guest feel special and at
See
home.
now, me, I know the truth. These people are just talking because we know where we meet. It's not just here. I'll start
just
pretending that I'm happy to see you today. We know where we meet, Mercy. Okay. Good morning, Eric.
Okay.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
good?
Yes, I am.
Super.
I'm good. CT, how are you?
Fine.
You know where we meet.
Actually, I didn't really want to belabor that particular point. But now that the issue of where we meet has come to the discussion, you and I both know where we meet
Yeah.
every so often. We're not even going to be specific about it.
No.
Yes. But
Or what we do, what
there
we
it
talk
is.
about.
Especially the things we talk about and things we see. But we shall not talk
Or
about
people
that.
we talk about.
Or the people we talk about at great length. Yes.
You well, CT?
I'm actually really very well.
Very good.
This cold weather is not mistreating me as I thought it might.
And that's good. And that's a very good thing.
Yes, my body seems to have acquired an MOU with it.
Eh?
Yes, and they are in agreement. The friction they used to have seems to have abated significantly.
Wametia sahihi mkataba wa
Yes.
maelewano.
Unlike the tiff-taff and the back and forth that one is seeing in the papers between top leaders in this country. Surely. Anyway.
Anyway, we'll talk about that. There's a lot of about a lot of conversation about our top leaders. But Dr. Mercy is here, so we'll be looking at the...
Have we asked Mercy how she's doing?
Yeah, many times.
How many
You can
times have we asked her?
Ask her.
Like six
Ask her,
times.
ask her.
Okay,
plus.
seventh time. Mercy, how are you doing?
I'm very well, City. I'm doing quite well, actually.
Very good.
So it's going to be a healthy Tuesday today in the conversation. We'll have a lot to talk about from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum. Doctors, healthcare workers are on strike. There's a standoff with the Council of Governors. So we'll be looking at that situation and what's happening, seeking to understand what exactly is going on. Then we talk about the rollout of the vaccine and what the government is putting in place. Are there plans? What are the preparations? What exactly do we need to know about that? Who's going to get vaccinated? Those people who are above 50 years old, prepare yourselves for a jab.
Eric, about 50 years old is how old exactly?
Above 50.
Oh, okay, about 50. Okay, I thought I heard you say about.
Above 50. Yeah. Then we also talk about mental health today. Yeah, that conversation that we raised yesterday, mental health and what's happening in our society. What we are seeing, a number of violence incidents leading up to death in some cases. People who are basically depressed because of what we are going through in this country. So let's have that conversation as well, okay? But let's begin with the COVID in numbers.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
All right. So let's start on the African continent, where yesterday we heard news of Rwanda and Malawi shutting down schools because of the high number of coronavirus cases that they had found in the country. Now, of course, high is a relative number, but with the seriousness that a country like Rwanda, for example, has taken when combating this virus, then it wouldn't be a small number. So nursery schools and schools of higher learning shut on Monday as COVID-19 cases surged. Schools in just the capital, Kigali, were shut down yesterday, but the education minister said schools in other regions would shut if more cases were confirmed there. Rwanda now has 11,259 cases of COVID-19. 146 of those have resulted in death. Yesterday, the numbers that were reported were 227 new cases and 4 deaths. So when we talk about the numbers being low or relatively low, as far as Rwanda is concerned, this is too high. The day before that, 182 new cases. The day before that, 277. Understanding that schools had opened in Rwanda months ago, when now they were able to release measures a little bit and see that now movement was allowed in certain parts of the country. As of yesterday, with the rising cases now above 200 and so on average every day, they decided that the best course of action was to close schools because they see children as super spreaders and said that this cannot continue to happen. If they did see other cases of COVID-19 around the country, then they would take the decision to close more schools. But this is something that they were not playing with and they said absolutely not. Stop it now. All right. So that's what's happening there. That's also happening in Malawi. We see more cases. We understand also in close proximity with South Africa, where they've been able to, where unfortunately they're also still recording high numbers of COVID-19. If we look specifically at the South African numbers, right now, they had been recording, lower cases over the last few days, but with the vaccine having come in and now them administering, South Africa now has 1,346,936 cases. If we look at what they were recorded yesterday, slight rise, 9,010 new cases in South Africa yesterday with 344 deaths, 12,000 the day before, 13,000 the day before that, 14,000 the day before that. So, I mean, it's a lower number than what they've realized in a week. However, they're still recording high numbers in South Africa. So now when countries like Malawi see that younger children are being confirmed with cases of COVID, they took the opportunity and rather did not take a chance and took that opportunity and closed schools. Okay, global numbers, we're looking at now 96,005,763 with 2,049,238 deaths on the globe. And yes, the United States still leading the pack now with 24,626,376. We heard yesterday that the government in Kenya will release a plan in the next coming days in terms of communication of how the vaccine will be rolled out coming from next month and who will get it when and where. Waiting to see how we'll have that discussion today, of course, and see what exactly it means for Kenya. If we're looking specifically at Kenya's cases now at 99,000 on the brink of 100,000, 227 cases with 1,734 deaths. Yesterday, just looking at the numbers, Kenya recorded 65 new cases. It's a Monday. It was a Monday, rather. You expect the cases to be low in terms of what testing was happening over the weekend. Maybe even lower with no testing whatsoever. But here we are. That's what we see. Looking at the day before that with 80 new cases and the day before that with 223. We've not gone beyond 250 cases a day in the last 17 days. So this is what we're looking at in Kenya and around the world.
Okay. What do you make of those measures by Rwanda? Shut down schools for 2 weeks in the capital, Kigali, because more than half of the cases that have been recorded have come from the capital and their cases in schools.
I don't
So
think
for
it's
that
any-
reason,
It's not different from any kind of measures they've taken before. They've never joked around with this from the very beginning. What did they do? They shut down international travel. They shut their borders with all bordering countries. They didn't play with this at all from the very beginning. Shut down movements within the country. Did not allow anything like this until they saw that they were able to have more or less a handle on things. And for the longest time, we didn't see deaths in Rwanda. So it's not outside any practice that they've held from the very beginning when COVID was found in the country. So it's not alarming to me.
And it isn't outside the practice, the internationally acclaimed practice all over the world, where whenever numbers shoot up, there is a shutdown, there's a lockdown, because it's understood exactly how it is the virus spreads. Remember, when we had a lockdown in Nairobi, our countryside, the rural areas didn't record any numbers. You recall? But though again,
Let's just say there was no testing in the rural areas.
tongue in
so
cheek, I was going to add precisely that. That with our country, there's also the issue of was really testing going on. But nonetheless, the numbers were really low. Then we opened up the city, and lo and behold, we started witnessing the spread of COVID, and we have continued to witness it. One could argue that they're being ultra cautious, but with COVID, there's nothing like being ultra cautious.
I think it's the nature of the virus that where there's crowding, where there's movement, it's bound to spread. So if you want to control and you're giving yourself like 2 weeks head start, then it makes sense that, you'd restrict movement or close down schools, reduce the chances of people congregating and coming together. Then you have a 2-week period in which to put certain things in place, maybe increase your testing and the areas in which you are testing so that you're able to isolate anyone who's positive. So for me, Rwanda is like the textbook example of what you need to do.
Yeah, okay. But let's look at the cases that are justifying this. It's 534 cases recorded on Friday. About half of those, 298, were in Kigali. For that reason, because we have seen there are 298 cases in Kigali, let's shut down the schools in Kigali.
Eric, when there were 15 cases in Kigali
Yes, I know.
8 months ago, they shut down the whole country.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's
It's just a country that's not taking chances with this virus. I mean, one person positive is one person too many. So 598 for a country that has been able to control the virus is a fairly big number.
Eric, what
So
were you
for me,
thinking?
I think
What were you thinking?
You're probably comparing it to the US.
not with
maybe
the US.
Kenya.
Not with the US,
But
actually.
Rwanda has been very serious about this thing.
And I know all that. What I'm just saying is, okay, when you say shut down schools in an entire region, in a capital, which has impact and implication, especially to the learners and the entire community. So, yes, I know Rwanda has been very tough on, what it wants to do to contain this virus, and it has done a good job in terms of even the numbers that we've seen recorded so far. But I'm just wondering, hey, you guys, ease up a little bit.
Why?
Why?
It's different from what it was looking like last year when you didn't know much. Now you can tell what's happening
No.
in your region,
If ease up and do what exactly?
and just let live.
No.
No.
Or let die.
No, not
That-
let
that-
die.
that- probably that is what this country, Kenya, has been up to. That, I mean, it's the right thing to do.
It's not.
2
but
weeks.
It's a balance.
No. 2 weeks. I mean, by the time they are coming to that decision, several things have been put into consideration. Several people have come into that conversation, and experts and everything. And so, for that country, it is beneficial to take these measures as opposed to letting this virus spread.
Yeah, I'm just thinking it's a bit too strong. That's what I'm just thinking.
Consider this,
It's a
Eric.
bit too. Wow,
Consider this. Is it ever too strong to avoid people dying?
No, it's not. It's not ever too strong to avoid people dying. But then you also balance and see at what rate are people dying out of this virus? At what rate is it spreading? At what rate are we getting our healthcare system stretched? At what rate? Consider all those things.
True.
And then consider people's livelihoods.
True.
When is the last time that Rwanda rolled out it? Remember, it went all out last year. I was fully in support. And it was going out even with social support. Right now, there's a cost to everything. I know in the end, it'll be good for them because they'll not be having so many cases. But
So
there's a
let me
cost
ask-
here
let me ask,
in terms of
what is-
livelihoods.
What is a 2-week sacrifice compared to a whole year's, freedom to do everything else?
Which whole year?
I mean, if within these 2 weeks you're able to put measures in place and you're able to control and contain the virus within the 2 weeks, so that for the rest of the year you're able to undergo your economic activities, resume school properly, and do everything else that you need to do to live, the 2-week sacrifice to me is not a big deal. Yeah,
Okay. We agree
to disagree.
to disagree. I see your point and I completely understand the point. I'm just saying, I'm just feeling like sometimes you balance it out. 16 minutes after 6. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's the Situation Room, live streaming on Spice FM KE, on YouTube, on Facebook, and Twitter. Wherever you are, say hello to us. We'll be saying hello to you. We have a guest host today, Dr. Mercy Korir. She's back, and we'll be having a lot of conversations about our healthcare system. We've started on Rwanda, so we'll continue like this throughout the show. Let's look at the weather. You're saying it's warm today?
It was warm this morning.
Okay. So CT Muga has even noticed that the weather is not so bad anymore. But we'll be looking at
the weather is not so bad, or his body has an MOU with the weather.
So the weather is no longer bad. Hence, therefore, we'll be back shortly.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM. Spice FM.
It's getting hot in here.
Oh, everybody steals. It's better a thief who brings something small back. And I say to myself, there's no better thief. A thief is a thief, period.
All those bribes, how much they're getting per year, how much inconvenience they're causing. As much as you call it a small case, it's worth it to be convicted.
The truth is, we are a tribal nation. Because if we were not tribal, and I want to go back to this, you cannot continue walking around with a mug which is clean outside and it's rotten inside.
We have become a fuliza country. We have mortgaged our country because of debt.
You've got one.
The weather with Spice FM.
All right, let's take a look at how warm it is or not in Nairobi this morning. 19 degrees, a few degrees up from yesterday. We'll see highs of 26 today and 14 degrees. When the sun comes up, it will be quite clear. In Nyeri this morning, it's clear at 19 as well. Highs of 24 and lows of 11. 14 will be the low in Nakuru today. 15 degrees at the moment, going to highs of 26. We're looking at 24 the high in Eldoret today. It's mostly cloudy at 14 this morning, dropping down to a low of 11. Mostly cloudy conditions rule the morning in Kisumu. 20 degrees at the moment, going to highs of 26 and lows of 18. It's mostly cloudy in Kakamega at 16, highs of 28 and lows of 15. We're looking at clear conditions in Mombasa at 26, highs of 34 and lows of 23. Malindi is mostly clear this morning at 26. We're looking at highs of 33 and lows of 22. Kampala is mostly cloudy this morning, stepping out of Kenya, highs of 25 and lows of 18. And we're looking at clear conditions in Dar es Salaam, going to highs of 32 and lows of 26. Clear conditions in Johannesburg, 13 degrees at the moment, highs of 26 and lows of 16. Looks like a mostly clear morning in Lagos as well, highs of 32 and lows of 24. Kinshasa, it's raining this morning at 24. That'll be the low for today, going to highs of 33. It's minus 7 degrees in Beijing this morning, and it's sunny. We're going to see highs of minus 2. That's the warmest it will get. Lows of minus 10. Cloudy conditions in Paris at 6, highs of 9 and lows of 6. It's slightly warmer in London this morning at 10 degrees. That'll be the low for today, rather. 100% chance of rain. It's already raining now, highs of 12. And coming into Tuesday morning in New York, it'll go to highs of 7 and lows of 1.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
6, wherever you are, very good morning to you. So people are all over and they're all logged in, right?
Samuel Weru says, good morning, Spice family. Greetings to Jeshi Wakovu. La Wakovu.
Just log.
The jersey of the cop.
Yeah. Shirai Gemwai also has boarded the car. Rather, he's at the car station waiting to board the Royal Eagle to Nairobi this morning. Dagio Guta tuned in. Salimio Dr. Mercy Miss Ndu tuned already from Nyakachi Nabola. And Shiro Mushai Odongo is tuned in from Atlanta. Moses Gashari is not happy this morning. He said that the president said we were on our own about COVID. So let the rallies go on, hence 24 hours business is back. Mbaya. This is Kenya. Yamasonko. Waterman Jeffries tuned in this morning as well and says, good morning. Master Dan, good morning. Tuned in this morning from Beijing. Sorry, man. It's already -7 this morning. Looks like it's going to be a crazy day for you guys. Okay, Oyawe is tuned in this morning from Yorongo University. Our Judah representative, Nipo, our former CS of Health, I don't know who that is to blame for the COVID mess. He says former. Not quite sure who he's talking about.
Maybe he's talking about the former CS.
Where there was no COVID.
Just before COVID.
Okay. Good morning, folks. Kev Santana says, y'all look sharp today, and he's streaming from Nanyuki. And he's still wondering why 2 billion shillings is pilfered every day in this country. Mdi Brownie Newton is tuning from Kahawa, as is Laban Tanui from Nandi. Isaiah Kabwaro says, good morning. Everybody's tuned in today. Al Cute Johnny is tuned in this morning from Syokimau, as is Robert from Mombasa. Cyprian Moura says, good morning, Dr. Mercy. We missed you. Good morning, guys. Alex is tuned in from Nyeri, as is Isaiah from downtown Minneapolis. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Kila mtu karibuni sana kwenye kipindi mpango wa siku ya leo. City, today's proverb.
Okay. Right. How well do you know your reptiles?
Yeah,
I'm actually asking.
Just know Brukenge and
All
Nyoka.
right. There's a close relative
What
of
is
the
Brukenge?
What is that?
I don't know.
Oh, you're Brukenge?
Have you a monitor lizard?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Now, the monitor lizard has a close relative. It's called the agama lizard.
Yeah.
Have you seen this lizard with really lovely colored head? Some are orange, blue, and then the tail is also. And if you look closely, yes, it's called an agama lizard. Okay? Right. Now, an agama lizard, this is a proverb for today. An agama lizard in the village will remain an agama village in town.
Will remain an Agama lizard.
Anagama lizard in town. Just come again.
Say it again.
An agama lizard in the village will remain an agama lizard in town.
All right.
Where is this from?
From Agama.
There's a Swahili proverb that's almost like that.
And what does this?
Jogoa
mji hawiki
hawiki jijini.
Jogoa kijijini hawiki mjini. But that's a different one. Jogoa la shamba. Jogoa la shamba haliwiki mji. That's different though. Because it's saying that you come here, you recognize where you are. This one is saying village here, same.
You will know. This one is an agama lizard. So
There's no Swahili proverb that matches.
There must
that.
be.
There has to be.
I'm certain there is. And my ignorance shouldn't be taken as a measure of the existence or non-existence of it. Yes. But I'm certain it exists.
There must be. If there's one that you know about, just let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. So let's take a look at the headlines. Where do you want to start?
Jeez.
You want to start at the G's point?
Okay, so on the front page of the Standard today, up there, Kananu swearing in as city governor has been halted. The details of this are on page 8, but the subheading is court orders that the new Nairobi deputy governor should not be sworn in as city boss until a petition challenging her vetting and approval is heard and determined. I mean, we went all out on this yesterday, just looking at really, okay, so what does this all mean? And soon after, the speaker of the Nairobi County Assembly decided, well, you know what, I have no reason but to hand over my hands to her. But in this case, court has said it's not going to happen. Nairobi Deputy Governor Anne Kananu has been dealt a major blow after the High Court stopped her from assuming the county's top seat. Justice Anthony Mrima ordered that Kananu should not be sworn in as the governor of Nairobi County until a petition filed by the Law Society of Kenya challenging her vetting and approval as the deputy governor is heard and determined. He said pending the hearing and determination of the application, a temporary injunction is hereby issued restraining anyone from swearing in Anne Kananu Mwenda as the governor of Nairobi City County. The judge said the petition also raised substantial constitutional questions on whether Kananu should become the city's governor and sent the file to Acting Chief Justice Philomena Mwilu, to appoint a bench of 3 judges to determine this. She was set to be sworn in as the new governor of Nairobi following her vetting and subsequent swearing in as deputy governor last Friday, but the LSK filed the petition to revoke her approval by the Nairobi County Assembly on the grounds that it was illegal and unconstitutional. Peter Wanyama, the society, through lawyer Peter Wanyama, the society instead wants the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission ordered to conduct a fresh by-election for the Nairobi gubernatorial seat, as they had planned, to allow Nairobi residents to elect a governor of their choice to succeed impeached Mike Sonko.
Okay. So immediately there are people who said, but you know this government are ignoring court orders. Unfortunately, in this particular case, you need the court to swear in there.
The governor.
So unless really even a judge ignores an order from another judge and appears for the swearing in, that's it. That's it. As we speak about that, so the president was speaking in the Vernacular stations yesterday, and he waded into the whole issue of Nairobi and the management of Nairobi, and he said, we fell out with Sonko. We supported him, first of all, to get that seat. And then he started now insulting everybody. He started doing all those things. He was always fighting people. Chaos everywhere. Now look at how our new man, General Badi, is doing. He's cleaning up Nairobi. It's a very good thing. The whole issue of now the succession of Anne Mwenda Kananu and what happens if she becomes governor, who does she appoint as deputy? ODM, us guys were supporting. So we are going to get the deputy position, are we not? So ODM is already angling for a deputy governor position. And then there's that other whole rumor that has been there for a while. So what happens? Will Anne Mwenda Kananu appoint a deputy governor and then leave the deputy governor to take over as the governor as she... Drama.
It's drama, but there's something significant here. She is the deputy governor. We can talk around this as much as we like. Court cases can do what they do in court, but she is the deputy governor.
Yep.
That to me is what is significant. So, and the work, this judge who is hearing this particular case, he has his work cut out for him, because unless they are going to nullify her. Yes. And how is that going to happen?
There's a case in that, remember?
Yes, there is a case. Now, how is that going to happen? Because to unravel this, to get to the point where the what Peter Wanyama and the Law Society of Kenya seem to want, an election, that is what has to happen. This current position that she has to be nullified. I'd like to see that happening.
This is what they want.
I'd like to see it happening, because
bring it all down and let's start
the
from
moment she is deputy, and she is deputy, my friend, she is just a breath away from being governor.
So you're saying her ascent to governor is imminent, and there's nothing they can do aside from these?
Not according to C.T. Muga. This is according to our constitution.
Right.
If you're the deputy governor and it is clear that the governor's position is vacant, it's you who ascends to it. This one is even not complicated.
So what you're saying is you are yet to see, or you're trying to see how you can see the court declaring her ascension as deputy governor being illegal.
Yes.
Which is the application before court.
Yes, exactly. And to do that, essentially, then what will she be? Because if she goes
back to becoming citizen.
Yes, if she is a deputy, then according to our laws, our constitution, she ought to ascend to that position because it's vacant. So if you decline and you then say the court rules that she cannot be
deputy governor,
then what is she? Because she is deputy governor. So you will make a ruling that goes against the constitution?
No. What do you mean? No. The application is to have that vetting and appointment as deputy governor nullified. So a court can actually say that, yes, that entire process was unprocedural, and therefore she should vacate that office of deputy governor.
Eric, this is what I want to see, because some other judge also sat and determined that this thing was okay, and that is why they swore her in. This is what I want to see. The law arguing against itself. This is going to be interesting.
Circus of epic proportions.
You think it'll be arguing against itself?
But that's what is going to happen. I'm waiting for it to happen.
But Nairobi is just a mess. From if you look at everything else.
From 2013, Nairobi has just been a mess.
Yeah, and even the problems that we are seeing ourselves, or the issues we are covering now, the NMS, first of all, is it even constitutional?
That's the thing.
Then the chaos that we are seeing in the county government. So the question that I've been asking myself is, do we even need a county government of Nairobi? Can we just have run it like the way DC is, where it's just a mayorship, because it is chaos.
We cannot now say, well, actually we can. Why can we not say? We can say what we are saying, but of significance is this. I find that, unpalatable as some of these activities may be, anything that brings into discussion our constitution and its applicability is something I welcome. Because I am seeing and understanding things that I could never have understood. For instance, if I look at...
No, don't look yet.
We're going into a break?
Let's first look at the roads.
Let me go into a break, then I will look.
And you will look.
Let him look at the roads, and then City will look at what he wants to look at. 6:30. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life. Spice FM, Malindi.
This is the time to be on Mombasa Road this morning, guys. Drives like an absolute dream, at least right now, into the city centre. This Tuesday morning, let's hope it's not as crazy as yesterday morning was. So far, so good. It's building up, though, right around the SGR, heading out. And then thereafter, you should be fine past General Motors, as then you head out towards Nairobi Stadium. And then you might, it might hold you up just a little bit. So coming all the way from Kitangela, you look fine this morning. Figueroa is flowing quite smoothly. There was a bit of a hold up with a break down by a lorry. This is right on the superhighway, just past Githurai. However, you can use the service lanes. Service lanes are your friends this morning, and they're looking pretty good. The bypasses are also looking good this morning, in and out of the city centre, eastern, southern, and that of Red Hill, looking very smooth right now. So this was the time to get out. We'll take a look at what happens. In about 30 minutes or so, we'll have entered traffic hour officially, and we will see what you have to say. Spice FMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Text on 40127. Let's get things moving this Tuesday.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 2:07. So look now, City.
Yes. I was looking. My powers of observation.
Right.
Page 12 of yesterday's Business Daily. This was something that we missed out on. But given what we're discussing, I decided to mention it because it's important. One of the things that happened with one Mr. Mutura taking over, taking over that acting capacity as governor, he signed certain documents that enable certain things to start functioning within the city. One of them was he unlocked money that would now pay vendors. There's 3 billion worth of debts that the Nairobi county government is now able to pay, which previously it was unable to pay because the things that required signing by the person who had that sort of authority, one, the immediate former governor of Nairobi had declined to sign those documents. So what I'm saying is, when you look at our laws and we look at the positions that people hold and the responsibility that comes with those positions, it's important that someone who actually understands the import of their role and their position is actually in place. It looks like our immediate former governor had lost touch with certain realities.
No. I think that argument is not necessarily it because, City, in previous years, he's been signing the budget. This particular one, there was a standoff over the budget because of how much money was to go to the NMS versus how much money then would be left for the running of the county government. That is the only reason why there was a standoff. It's not because he did not want people to be paid, people who were owed, or workers to be paid, people who require a salary, or functions to be performed by the county that needed to be performed.
Eric, signing, this was not the only thing he declined to sign. There were certain documents that pertained to the sharing of power with the NMS that, if you recall, he had initially declined to sign. I was actually speaking of a far deeper matter. In signing or not signing those documents, he was assenting to a certain position. Now, in not signing, he also gave indication of a certain position he had taken. Now, that position is, in my opinion, what led to his eventually being ousted, because that's what happened.
Talk about.
Yes, exactly. That is all I'm saying. It isn't as though he had not signed in the past. Oh, he had, all right. But given the current circumstances and that he's a politician, he ought to have seen the political wind and the direction it was blowing. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, sometimes it's important to push back. Anyway.
Well, you know, the thing about a pushback, there's a counter pushback.
Yeah.
So he pushed back and there was a counter pushback.
And it came in the force of a hurricane.
And here we are.
Well, speaking of pushing and back and hurricanes, lawyers almost came to blows at a heated meeting.
Why didn't they just come to blows?
They would have just finished the thing once and for all. But
Okay,
let's
yes.
see. What should have been a housekeeping meeting of learned friends yesterday turned into a heckling contest, punctuated by thinly veiled insults at the Law Society of Kenya. Suspended all 10 council members in a heated, chaotic convention. NSK's Gitanga Road office could have passed for a busy open-air market as some lawyers voiced their opinions while shouting down those who opposed them. The special general meeting was called to discuss the appointment of auditors to probe LSK's books of accounts, deliberate on an impeachment motion against Mr. Harvey, the suspension of some council members, and the appointment of advocates to represent the lobby in court cases involving internal wrangles. So there have been months of infighting, one backing, and so there are two factions now of the LSK, one backing Mr. Harvey and another one backing CEO Mercy Wambua. So the special general meeting was called to settle these differences that have threatened to stall operations at the umbrella body. After more than 5 hours of an impasse, over how to proceed with the meeting, Harvey dismissed the impeachment motion filed against him by lawyer Gada Kuko, just moments after members suspended the council. The council oversights the LSK's operations, just as boards of directors watch over companies. Harvey made it clear that ongoing efforts to unite the two factions will likely not work, an indication that the fights at the society are a long way from over. This is what he said. I've taken to the podium here, and said who is interfering with the running of LSK. So don't come and tell me to unite with those people. So the meeting that was to unite things divided things even further, and we have an LSK that has two factions that are now warring.
Good.
So the council is out or not?
10 out, done. Impeachment motion passed aside by the one who was being... by the one against whom the motion had come. He stood up and said, now, because there's no order here, this impeachment motion, we cannot hear it today. So carry on. Disband the council, but we carry on with other matters.
He is the person who was supposed to be impeached.
Yes, but he stood at the podium and said, there's no order here. So this impeachment motion cannot carry through today. The motion cannot even be called. So
Isn't it amazing?
let's do it another day, shall
How
we?
political culture pervades every area of our lives. Yeah, because if you look at what's happening at the national level, is it any different?
Absolutely not.
Learned friends indeed.
They will live to fight another day. It would appear.
I hope this time they actually come to blows.
Yeah? A little bit more interesting. than
Yeah,
this.
this make pretend things of,
To Maliza.
yes, shouting threats and then issuing threats.
Yes.
Mano el mano. Go.
Finish this thing
Let,
once and
let
for
the
all.
hand loose, for heaven's sake, so that we have lovely cases in court determining whose teeth did what and
By
whose
the
nose
same
did
learned
what.
friends, no doubt.
Yes.
But if you look at it in the traditional or the old times before some of us were born, when you had a disagreement, you used to go and square it out. Then the winner of that fight is the winner of the argument.
Yes. Where do you think these terms like shoot from the hip came from? That's where it all came from. We go outside. It's the person who lives at the end of that. Yeah, as in literally, people
You
will
win-
die.
you win life.
You win alive. You lose, you're dead, my brother or sister.
And the argument dies with you.
Yes. It's finished.
Okay. Mercy, what are you looking at?
No, I'm definitely, it's on the striking medics on page 3 of the standard. This thing always amazes me. this kind of reaction. On page 3 of the Standard is a story by Wainaina Ndung'u and Kennedy Gashuhi. Yesterday, the president was at a Vernacular station addressing the nation. And so he touched on the striking medics, where, according to this piece, President Uhuru Kenyatta appeared to rule out a possible settlement of grievances with the health workers on strike. So the headline here is that the president urges striking medics to return to work as KOTU slams governors of Arao. So the president is quoted to have said, I want the media to investigate this aspect. And this was, he's saying that the medics in the public sector earn more than their counterparts in the private and mission hospitals. So he wants the media to investigate this aspect and bring it out for the public to judge us objectively, Uhuru said. So I'm just wondering, you're the head of state. Why are you asking the media to investigate something that, I mean, is this is information that he has within any ministry, within any county government? He can ask for this information and bring it out here.
I think
so why
he's
is
saying,
the media?
he's saying he knows it.
The media is
but
not.
you guys, as you report, dig deeper.
But we have done that. And first of all, okay, so I've always found fault in comparing what people in the private sector, the healthcare workers, earn versus those in the public sector. Your public sector is supposed to be the pace setter in terms of everything from quality, remuneration, everything, so that the private sector can follow suit. But here, you want the public sector to follow what the private sector is doing. That cannot happen.
No, he's saying the public sector workers are actually earning more than their counterparts in private and mission, which means that they're already setting the pace.
No.
So they
the
shouldn't be
argument has
complaining.
always been that you're earning a lot more than your people in private sector. So you should not, what do you say? You should not complain. In fact, you should be earning probably less than what is in the private sector, because the private sector is seen as,
Profit making.
profit making. It's up there. So that is the SI unit in which to compare what people earn.
Actually, that argument is flawed. Anything that is profit making, you cannot go around making profits and splashing money on
Like
people.
giving people everything.
No, you will pay well, but you are not going to go overboard. Remember, the government has the benefit of having coffers that are replenished on a daily basis. Okay? So the government always has money.
And its one task is to spend that
Yes.
money.
That's it, really. We fault them on how they spend it, but they have the money. Even now, the government has money.
When you are saying it is broke,
It has money.
it has money.
It has money, and it keeps getting money. Yes. And also, if you look at the history of this country, for the longest time, going back to that time when you said you hadn't been born, and even around the time when you had been born,
He's not going to forget that, right?
Clearly.
the government for the longest time was a better employer than the private sector. Because the government guaranteed you, should we say, a permanent security, a permanent employment. The government would offer you a house. The government would even offer you transportation. The government offered many things. So people prefer to work for the government, actually.
But the government should always be a better employer because of the kind of services it's supposed to offer. I mean, if you're looking at social services, healthcare, security, etc., government should be a better employer so that when you are working for government, in an ideal world, you should be comfortable.
Yep.
So that all of
You
these other
focus
issues
all your attention on service
on
delivery.
service delivery.
Exactly.
Yes.
But what we see is that now you want, or the president wants, healthcare workers in the public sector to be miserable and expect them to still offer the same services. It's not going to happen. And he further goes on to, he called on all health workers to return to work and agitate for better terms while on duty. And he says, letting people die as you watch and deny them medical care is first and foremost a sin against God. So first of all, this I usually think is guilt-tripping people when they're agitating for their constitutional rights, because everyone is entitled to being unionized. But two, he's shifting the blame to the healthcare workers, yet he's the head of state. I mean, if he wanted this strike to have ended, he would have done that. So why are we shifting the blame to the healthcare workers that they're not offering services? Just because as the head of state you're not sitting in a clinic and offering services doesn't absolve you from responsibility.
Because
of
it's
people
easy.
dying.
I mean, if you're asking why do that, because it's easy. It's easy to do that. But I mean, you talk about examples around the world where, you know, it works. Education, it works. The majority of people, for example, in the United Kingdom are in public schools. Majority of people take their sick to public hospitals because the system works. So I
Okay.
mean, it's easy to lay the blame on somebody.
Peter Mwangombe has a comment, and we'll just read that comment and go to the break. And hopefully we come back.
Peter says,
It should not concern him. He has done a lousy job of governing. Finish and go.
Have you seen them? Am I live?
Yes, it's a very nice outfit, I must say. Good
Thank
job.
you. Asante sana.
The compliment is well received.
Good morning and thank you. Everyone was was asking me what channel is Spice FM.
96.7. Tell them that, right?
Yes, now they know.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have
What
you.
a beautiful studio, my friend.
I've been to other radio stations, but I've never seen anything like this.
Thank you, and it's very nice to be in a modern studio. Absolutely brilliant.
And I have to say, it's a very cool ambiance here in your radio room. Just for our listeners, I think it is below zero in this room here. Very Swiss temperatures.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
That's in minutes to 7.
94.4 Spice
Spice. It's the situation room. We're still looking at more and more headlines in the papers.
Eric, but before we look at that, you know, one of the things that keeps coming up with reference to the conversation that our president had on vernacular radio station is precisely this. Why in vernacular radio stations and why in vernacular? It's a question that is being asked.
Okay.
You want my opinion, my personal opinion?
as Charles.
Yes. Not even as C.T. Muga, as Charles now. He was addressing a very specific group of people in the country against the backdrop of claims that had been made that he is not talking to his people and that he's too laid back and that he isn't bothering. And sometimes one of the things, if you have what we call a mother tongue, you realize there's some communication that is far more effective when you say it in your mother tongue. It's like an insult. It arrives home infinitely more and it goes deeper when it is said in vernacular.
Which injection is that you doctors do?
My thought, but Mercy, your thoughts seem to differ from mine.
Of course. Okay, so
Of course,
several decades back when I was in primary school, remember when you're learning about the symbols of unity for our country?
Yep.
You have the flag. I don't know. I think the national anthem was the other one. I don't remember, but I remember the
we
president.
have not changed our national anthem, just so that you understand.
So it was a symbol of unity. You know, that thing that brings all of you together.
Yes.
And one of them was the president. In an ideal world, and tomorrow we'll be inaugurating Biden, he said, I'll be a president for those who voted for me and those who didn't.
Yep.
For everyone.
Yep.
But here, in my opinion, as Mercy, when the president goes to a vernacular radio station and speaks in vernacular, he automatically, alienates or, I don't know, what's it called?
He alienates everybody else.
That does not speak that particular language. We have several tribes in this country. So you're speaking to one and you're saying the rest, all of these things I'm discussing are not affecting you. But then now when we hear the translations from what was discussed, one of the issues was on striking healthcare workers. That is affecting everyone.
But at what point does it come out that what I'm saying only affects the people that hear this language?
No. In my opinion, we should not even be having this discussion. If you think you have an issue that is important to be discussed, speak it in a language that everyone will listen. You rise above the ethnicity, you rise above this tribal, cocoons and tribal boxes that we put ourselves in, and you rise above that and speak to everyone, because at the end of the day, it's not that one tribe that elected you People will disagree, but he was elected by several different other people.
Okay.
So the conversation.
But here is
should
the
be
other
able
counter
to
argument to this, Mercy. This is not a national address. Whenever the president makes a national address from the steps of State House, he speaks in English, Swahili. When he goes to Nyayo National Stadium or Gusii on national days and he's making a national address, he does not even use any word that is vernacular. He speaks the national languages, all right? At some point, he will appear in English stations and speak English. At some point, he will host Swahili radio stations at State House and speak Swahili. At some point, like yesterday, he appears before these vernacular radio stations, and there are many, and speaks in that language. If he was able to speak in Kiluya, he'd call in the Kiluya radio stations and speak in Kiluya.
The point,
But
Eric,
because
that I'm
he's
making,
not, because he hasn't done that, it doesn't mean that, I don't think actually it means that he is alienating, he is positioning himself as, because I am Kikuyu, therefore I'm speaking to my people, the Kikuyu. Not necessarily.
Actually, Eric, your point is valid, but what Mercy is saying is the perception of it.
we shouldn't even have that conversation. It should not be on the table. When you are the president, you're the president for everyone. That part of having a vernacular station, whether you speak Luya, Kalenjin, whatever, shouldn't even arise.
So appear there but speak in Swahili.
No. You should, I mean, how many national radio stations and national TV stations do we have? I mean, had he even called all the TV stations for a joint production and discussed these issues in Swahili or English, it would have been okay.
Those are TV, those are not radio.
Even the radio stations we have, Spice FM is one of them. We could have come here and sat here and we would have, discussed all of these issues, because these are national radio stations that everyone can listen to and everyone can understand. We should not even have the conversation of a president going to any vernacular radio station. If you have Giriama speaking president, they should not go to a Giriama station. Because
what
you're
if
the
they go
president
to
for
the
everyone
Giriama
else.
station but speak in national language?
You see, if that Giriama station, where is it broadcasting?
It's broadcasting to a certain group of people,
in
yes.
that probably in just that locale. What we're saying is, it is supposed to be national.
But who
we should not have
determines
this
national?
conversation.
You see, for example, when the
National
president
is
when the
all
president
corners and
invited
all
the
borders
editors of the
country.
nation, right, and he spoke to the editors of the nation, can we say that he made a national address? If I don't watch NTV, if I don't read the Nation, I have no access to that information that he's given. So I think we'll be starting to split hairs if we start even going that granular and saying, do not appear on one if you're not appearing on all.
Actually, this discussion is actually fruitful in this sense. You see, these perspectives are all valid if you ask me. I personally do not have a problem whatsoever with the president speaking vernacular in a vernacular radio station. None. Because this is a politician. Politicians in this country, if you want to gain traction nationally, you'd better have your backyard who speak your language backing you. So when it comes to, it's just a simple fact about our politics. So if you have an issue and it seems to emanate from the backyard, which is supposed to be the backbone of your support, then the best way to address them is in a language that resonates with them. Kiswahili won't, English won't. So you choose that language, and all the politicians do it. All. It's just that in this particular case, whatever the president said on vernacular radio station was taken, interpreted, and has become national news because the president is national.
He's the president, yeah.
Yes,
Sure,
so anything that he does is given a national perspective.
However, he did deal with issues that right now have taken national attention. I think that's where we're coming from here. That there were issues of a national nature that had already been. I mean, we're in the throes of this right now. And it would seem as if, all right, that he's having this conversation to a select group of people about an issue that affects everybody. That's what it would appear like. And then, of course, one would have to ask, then, it could be that he was taking a trot to stations to have a conversation.
Let me
and
ask
he's
you
going
guys.
to go to other stations later.
If we assume-
and he will go, just hold on, and that he will go to other areas to have a further conversation later. It just happens that this is one that he did yesterday.
So if today the president was not on any radio station, but he was at a lawyer's function, and he was speaking at a lawyer's or a judge's colloquium, and he spoke about all those issues that he spoke about yesterday, would we be considering that, why did he address national issues in professional
You know,
group.
A
to
professional group is multi-ethnicity. This is
But it's he'll be talking about doctors' issues to lawyers. He'll be talking about housing issues to lawyers. He'll be talking about all those issues to lawyers.
Here we're talking about ethnicity, and there's something about language. And if people who've traveled abroad anywhere, if you go to some not remote place, but if you go to some country, some town, some village, and you happen to find somebody who speaks Swahili, you will get excited. You'll be happy because there's a way you can connect. What City is saying, when you drill down to that language, that vernacular that you people understand, there's a certain connection that other people will not be there. So you kind of alienate everyone else who doesn't speak that language. And if we look at, though this is English and it's still what I'm seeing here just right in front of me, if you look at the Trump era, he was speaking to his base and he's drumming up support to, with the people that believe and understand what he's saying. And we've seen what that has done to America over the last 4 years. So if we go this route, if we continue going this route where when you say, the president is a politician at the end of the day, so he's going to drum up support. If you go that route, then we'll just continue boxing ourselves into our tribal boxes, because somebody else next time will be some other language and he'll alienate everyone else.
Mercy.
And continue
we are already
speaking
there.
their
He is not taking us anywhere that we don't already exist in.
But
He should be getting
he's
us out of
supposed
there.
to be getting us
No.
out of there. That's what we are saying.
The argument here, if you ask me, this ethnicity that people keep saying is negative. It is not. There's nothing wrong with someone and their tribe. Nothing, absolutely. The negative ethnicity that is propagated by politicians is what is our issue here.
Which is why people go to their vernacular stations to sort of like a war cry and drum up support.
We normally call it dog whistle communication. That things are said that you wouldn't understand. But look, again, I'm certain views will differ in this perspective. But the variety that we exhibit in this country, given our various ethnic backgrounds, to me is one of the most wonderful things that anybody can encounter. Because in existing in such an ecosystem, you learn something that ordinarily you wouldn't. It's called tolerance. You learn how to live with people who are not quite like you. It is a good thing.
President Moi Kibaki hardly ever
He never did.
addressed.
Not hardly ever didn't.
Never did.
I'm just saying hardly ever, even when he went to public events, spoke in vernacular.
Didn't. Never did.
Moi didn't.
Didn't.
Well, once in a while he would.
No.
Even
Nope.
Kibaki, once in a while he would.
No.
Yeah, they go to auctions. He
No.
would
No.
say
No.
one or two things.
No. They didn't.
See, even me, I have a memory.
My
My memory
If your
tells
memory
me.
serves you right.
My memory tells
No,
me
your
that
memory is selective.
I've attended a Kibaki function where he spoke a sentence
That's
or
a
two.
Kibaki function.
Yes, he was president at the point where he spoke in Kikuyu. So that's why I'm saying hardly ever went, for example, to vernacular radio stations and spoke in that language. Or even as you're saying, Moi would try as much as possible wherever he would go, speak the national language.
Eric,
there were no vernacular stations in Moi's era until the final years.
You see, if someone has a private function and speaks in vernacular, you see, this is really very different from going on to a radio station. This is what Mercy is trying to say.
It's a radio station issue.
You should be getting us out of the
No, because you're speaking to the
divisiveness
whole
in this country. We should be getting out of all
Of
these
that.
divisions.
Okay.
And when you're the president and you're saying tunataka watu wakuje pamoja, we are unified, unity and all of those things.
Yep.
This is not a way to start that unity.
Okay. More and more of these conversations coming up in the next hour. Let's talk about the plight of healthcare workers across the country. We have had this conversation more than once. Now today we have the expert as well in the studio, and this is the health and science editor with the Standard Group, Dr. Mercy Karir. Good morning. It's now 7 o'clock. Keep it right here for more of these conversations.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru. Traffic.
Right, it's building up already. Let's look at the Eastern Bypass this morning. Traffic is not moving. Bumper-to-bumper situations. Trying to get to Thika Road out of there. It looks like it's not going to happen today as fast as you would like it. Thika Road then inbound the city, also moving quite slowly. Let's look at Mombasa Road coming off of the SGR, then heading towards General Motors. Slowed down also quite some. After that, it should be all right. And then you get to the Nyeri Stadium roundabout. It's going to slow down some more. The Red Hill Bypass performing absolutely well this morning. Getting onto Hulu Highway, though, is going to be a problem. So if you don't have to be in that area, you can use the bypass and get out to town without too much of a headache. Kiambu Road, doing what it did yesterday. We're already at 4 lanes trying to connect to the highway. That's not happening this morning either. Stick to the highway right now. Service lanes were performing good before, but it seems like that has changed. We'll look at other places and see how that opens up for you this morning. Talk to us on Spice FM KE on Twitter. Let's see where you might be stuck or where you have an alternate route. Text us as well on 40127.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room.
It's
The
2.5
only way
minutes
to
after
start.
7. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It's a Situation Room, broadcasting on Spice FM online, Spice FM KE, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And we are live on KTN Home for the next 2 hours until 9 o'clock. In the room this morning as well is Dr. Mercy Korir. She is the group editor at the Standard Group in charge of health and the science desk. But before we have the conversation, let's hear today's proverb from C.T. Muga.
An agama lizard in the village will remain an agama lizard in town.
An agama village in the lizard. An agama lizard in the village will remain an agama lizard in town. And you're asking ourselves what Swahili proverb comes close to this.
Or what English equivalent?
Or what English?
Because this is an African proverb spoken in English. But there could be an English equivalent.
Okay. Any other equivalents? Please let us hear about them. So let's talk about the state of our healthcare today. That's why we have our guest host today, Dr. Mercy Korir. The latest update from around the country.
Okay.
From your desk, Daktari.
So I think the grievances in the health sector, I think, make me sad, partly because sometimes I think there are issues that can be addressed when people come together, they sit down and address the issues raised by both parties. So we have the nurses' strike. We should be on day 40 or 41. I'll have to check that. They went on strike in December because one of the things they were asking for was an increase of their risk allowance from 3,000 to 19,500. And then the other issues that cut across all healthcare sectors, good working condition and good working environment. They're asking for personal protective equipment. They're asking for medical cover when they fall sick in the line of duty, group life insurance, because they are at the front lines and, they're at the highest risk of contracting the virus. And this cut across even with the clinical officers. And what the clinical officers added to this, and I think it will also cut across, is that there was an issue of the non-remittance or their statutory deductions. So this is what was happening, where in your payslip, you have paid your NHIF, your NSSF, your loans, but then the banks are on your case because you are in default, you're in arrears. You're being listed at the Credit Reference Bureau because this has not been, the banks and your SACCOs are listing you there because of, default. And if you look at it, if your NHIF is not paid, then it means that you cannot access healthcare because when you go to a hospital, then you're in arrears at the NHIF, yet you've not been earning that money. So that was the other thing that cut across, and that's what the doctors also had in their, their strike notice that is in December. But what we saw was that the government quickly came into an agreement with the doctors. They went back to work. The nurses are still on strike because they cannot come into an agreement. The clinical officers had come. It was a New Year's gift, also seen as a New Year's gift. But shortly, the Council of Governors were like, even if you strike for 100 years, we're not even going to pay you even a cent. Kisii County government, they had the recognition agreement to the clinical officers. So they issued a notice that, we no longer are in any agreement. We don't recognize you anymore. So that brings a lot of issues. One, because it's the constitutional right of every worker in this country to be unionized if they so wish. And it is the work of the unions to agitate for the welfare of their members. It is the work of the government, county government, national government, to have discussions with these parties and come into an amicable agreement. That is what industrial relations and labor relations is all about. It's not that, that we are the government, listen to us, go back to work. And you see the kind of agreements that the president is raising, the governors are raising, that, you're earning more than your colleagues in private sector. The governors are saying you're earning more than
your colleagues,
than your other cadres. Everyone now will start rising and saying, I'm a teacher, I'm also in the front line. I don't know, in admin, I'm also in the front line. Everyone will start agitating for these things. And so it's a lot of discussions, which for me is about, sometimes I think is just thumping egos at play instead of solving the issues. That's one. Two, this government sort of want to box us into the age-old conversation about pay rise, pay hike. If you look at the grievances raised by the healthcare workers, only a small fraction was about pay rise, and this was because of previous collective bargaining agreements, previous return to work agreements, that they had come into signing with the county governments, and they have not been implemented. So the issues was implement what you had promised to do. Let's get into an agreement on this. But now the conversation that people are trying to make us report as a media is that, people are asking for a pay hike, people are asking for this and this. But when you look at the issues, really, if it's about a good working environment, that's your mandate. I mean, a good working environment for your worker is a good working environment for the clients, which is the citizens, the patients. So some of these things, I fail to understand why a solution has
Well,
not
we are
been
not yet
reached
getting there. Let's bring in two guests this morning. We're going to have a conversation with the chair of the Kenya Medical Practitioners Dentists Union in Nyanza, and this is Dr. Kevin Osuri, and the secretary of the KMPDU in the South Rift, Dr. Davji Bimji Atela. Good morning, Daktari. Madaktari. That's what I'm going to say. So we have them on the line and they're joining us. I'm the one who had not done what I'm supposed to have done. I'm the government here. Okay, Madaktari, habari za asubuhi. And thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to start with you, Dr. Davji Atela. You've heard the introduction that Dr. Masi has made, and basically just bringing us up to speed on what has been happening in the country. We've had the conversations with doctors, with clinical officers, with nurses on this show many times before. And she says it's like we're still being brought back into thinking that the agitation here by all the healthcare workers is just about your pay and your welfare, and it is not. So for the benefit of the citizenry who are now not accessing healthcare services, what else are you agitating for?
Thank you so much. Generally, when you look at the issues that were raised, for example, with the doctors, the union during the strike and again in November, it was very clear that there were about 11 issues that were raised. We've had a very difficult terrain where doctors have been working in different counties. For example, when you look at the county of Laikipia, county of Kirinyaga, and then other counties in the country, when they were demanding for the implementation of the CBA that was implemented in 2017, these doctors were dismissed from the different counties. And this was some of the issues that when the doctors raised their strike notice on December was part of the issue. The other thing, we look at most of these particular counties online in the country, the doctors are offering services that which themselves they are unable to receive. We've had cases in many counties where when a doctor gets sick or when he gets sick or gets admitted, they have to go back to their families to sell land or to sell properties to get medical treatment, or to go back to their colleagues to contribute to have them treated. This has been seen in a number of counties where there's completely non-existence of any health cover. The other issue that is making this particular matter really grave is that there are some places whereby the infrastructure, the hospitals have been built, they have 100 beds, but in the whole facility there might be one doctor or two.
Dr. Davji, where your audio is a bit, it's giving us problems. Let us sort that out. So as we do that, maybe you can go quickly to Dr. Osuri. And Osuri, we've been at the trenches with you. You've been here for a very long time. And from where you sit, and I can see you're seated, why are we not able to solve these issues? Are they any different from the ones that were raised in 2011, for example, when KMPDU was registered officially? Dr. Ian, mute. Okay, Dr. Osuri.
His line is also muted, so let's hope that they sort it out with John, our producer. You'll have a conversation with him shortly. So anyway, you're saying 2011 union registered.
Mm-hmm.
Since 2011, there's been agitation after agitation almost every year.
Yeah,
Doctors raising issues with first the national government, and then now we went into devolution with the county governments, back and forth. But as I heard with Dr. Davji restarting that conversation, it was about the welfare of the doctor, where the doctor is working, looking at healthcare, looking at their own health insurance, their own insurance. And my question is, so how about the health system itself? In terms of, has there been much agitation by the unions, not just the KMPDU, but the nurses unions, the clinical officers unions, on how much budgetary allocation, for example, you're getting into healthcare, on how many new health facilities are being built, on equipping these health facilities, on ensuring that these health facilities have adequate water, electricity, and running services throughout, so that then the doctor, even when the doctor comes to work, he gets the gloves and all those things, he's able to actually deliver. Have the unions been agitating for this?
They have, definitely. And if you look at the Managed Equipment Services Scheme, was actually it was poorly implemented, obviously, but it was as a result of the 2011 strike, where one of the key issues as a return to work formula or agreement was a roadmap to improving our healthcare facilities. And if you look at the document that was done then, it was called the Musimi Task Force. The document was very clear, and it had a good roadmap on this, what you're talking about, building facilities and equipping them, in addition to hiring the necessary health worker skills across board. Because, for example, if you have a radiology unit, you just don't need a radiologist.
Yeah.
You need your engineers, you need the technicians, as in it's not just about the doctors. So there was a very clear roadmap on how to do that. In addition now to the budgetary allocations that would be needed to get to that. But what we saw happen was people just went and picked what we have seen turn out eventually with the managed equipment scheme. So if that had been done at the time, we probably wouldn't be where we are seeing now. And in 2011, when the unions were registered and they started actively working, it was very clear what they were agitating for at the time. And this was a pay rise. And this was because at the time, the doctors' take home was around about 40,000 when you do everything, because the basic salary was some 30,000 shillings or thereabout. So it was very obvious what they were agitating for at the time. But in addition to that was now that, okay, sort out our pay. In addition to this, sorting out our working environment. And when the doctors, the nurses, the clinical officers, the lab techs, when the working environment is conducive, that translates to, what the patients and what the citizens will get. But we always just come back to the issue of, pay rise. It's not always about pay.
So obviously, there's a search to have the conditions looking better. When we're talking about insurance, covering everybody that's working in these conditions and making sure that this is done. Look, at this point, what we've heard coming out from many quarters is that, all right, if we're going to talk about an increment in salary, for example, that we cannot do. If we're going to discuss matters of insurance, if we're going to talk about better working conditions, then let's come to the table. So why then can't there be a coming to the table on these issues? That they said we can discuss this. They've said that there are certain
When you say
things
coming to the table, what do you mean?
They have been at the table.
No. Most recently, even yesterday, we heard the chair of the Council of Governors say, if we're going to talk about in terms of bringing more money, we can't. We will not be able to for the next 30 years, I believe is what he said. Even if we had this conversation for the next how many years, we don't have the power to be able to do that. We can discuss some other matters which are on the list, right? Which is what he said. So can that happen? I remember we spoke also with the chair of clinical officers in the country, and they said, okay, look, we're even ready to take a little bit of these things that we are making demands about. We can take a little bit, but we don't have an opportunity to come to the table. I'm asking, what is it going to take for those things that they say we can do to come together and let's have a discussion? Or is it an all or nothing conversation?
Let's see if we can get Dr. Osuri back on the line. Dr. Osuri, hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Now we hear you. Asante sana. So you hear the issues that we've raised. Happy New Year to you, Doc. You hear the issues that we've raised, that what Ndu is asking. So why is it not possible to come to the table?
Even when they've come back, Dr. Suri, now if we've come back in terms of government and they've said, look, okay, there are certain things we're not able to do. Whether they can or not, that's a whole other kettle of fish. But they've said, look, this we cannot discuss, but there are certain things that we can talk about to get this ball rolling. And I'm asking, is it an all or nothing conversation? All the demands that have been made, we are taking all of them, or we will take nothing and continue with the strike? Or is there, a halfway mark that can be reached?
Thank you. And as Mercy has said, I've been in the trenches with Mercy, so she left me. I'm still in the trenches fighting for doctors' rights. And as you correctly stated, what doctors were asking for are not things that cannot be done. And it's so unfortunate that we are living in times when workers are out of duty, healthcare workers, and the governors and the national government, instead of engaging these doctors, we are being addressed in funerals, church gatherings, and God knows where else. So the situation here is not that the healthcare workers are not willing to dialogue or to negotiate, but instead the employer or the government is intentionally avoiding this conversation. It's very difficult conversation.
So I hear you saying they're saying that they can talk. They're saying that they're ready to have the conversation. But in reality, when you say, all right, here we are, ready to talk, then somehow they disappear into the wind.
Yes, I can tell you for a fact, doctors signed a return to work formula. Nurses signed a return to work formula, but you've seen the Council of Governors instead address very hopeless press statement saying that the Council of Governors will not honor these agreements. Instead of appending their signatures and committing to these agreements, the governors instead are prevaricating around these issues, further prolonging the suffering of Kenyans. Unfortunately, in this fight or in this quest to get our rights, including very basic things like NHIF coverage, the governors instead are giving show cause letters to doctors, stopping their salaries and firing most of them. I can tell you for a fact, right now, doctors are receiving more show cause letters more times than they are receiving their salaries every month. So we have doctors, many whose salaries have been stopped. I can mention off my head, there's Busia, Kirinyaga, like Kipia, who've been fired, Nyamira just next door from where I'm seated. And it's so bad that the governors have instead resorted to intimidation, harassment, and outright illegalities, especially meted on rightfully striking workers or agitating workers. And as you have seen, it's so unfortunate. Nurses have been on strike for over 41 days. Doctors cannot work in hospitals in isolation. We cannot work without our other colleagues. For ourselves as well as doctors. Sorry, I think the sound.
Sorry, something happened with your line, but just go ahead. We can still hear you.
Yes, so I'm saying, as far as doctors are concerned, we are willing and we are able to dialogue with the county government. We have extended an olive branch. We have stretched out our hand, but instead the governors and the national government is meeting us with fists, kicks, and blows. We are asking them to please take cognizance of the fact that Kenya is a signatory to International Labour Organization statutes and convention, and Kenya committed that the workers of this country have a right to bargain. We have a right to organize ourselves in labor movements. And it is very, very unfortunate that the same county governors, particularly the bottleneck here is governors, not even the national government. The national government led by Mutai Kagwe has been willing and has met us, including the labor ministry, and we have almost come to a conclusion. But it is the Council of Governors that is adamant, almost threatening healthcare workers with dismissals, show cause letters, making us work in fear and utter disarray. So it's our plea to them to come to the table and honor agreements which they have committed to and signed to, so that healthcare can be normalized and everybody can get back to work. Yeah.
Dr. Teller, is it getting closer? I mean, looking at it from your end, do we see that it's possible to have something that will work out and get everybody back to work? Dr. Bimji?
Thank you so much. Generally, what is, I think, will help in that if the governors negotiate with healthcare workers with openness and objectivity. In most instances, as my colleague has said, the doctors and the healthcare workers go to the table with an honest way to end the impasse that they're existing at the time. But mostly the county government try to give promissory notes or promises that they know they have zero intentions to implement. And so I think if they come objectively to have something that they will help and will actually give wananchi, they need to have wananchi have services, there's possibility around that in person. But when you look also in the counties, the governors or the county governments are more concerned about the wage bill and they themselves not beneficiaries to the public health system. So as this disagreement and dialogue continues, they are able to get services, which makes them not able to be a part of the suffering of the common wananchi. So if they lower down their egos and accept to resolve the matters that have been brought forth to them, I think there will be a better direction to the whole impasse that we've been having.
So, Davji, I'm just wondering, and maybe yourself and Dusuri, but let me just ask you this. Since the issues cut across all the cadres, why can't all the cadres come together and discuss these things as one unit? Because clearly when one is not at work, the others cannot work. Thank
you. But that's a discussion that has been ongoing. And mostly the reason why that has not been able to really take place conclusively is because of the existence of the different unions, which then have different individuals who bargain for the same thing. But I foresee if we had, and also the other thing is bargaining with like 47 counties. You realize that when this particular strike kicks off, all the county governments were handling these workers on a different framework. There are those governors that were immediately the strikes began started debating workers in different places, while there are those ones who are able to listen to the workers and try to solve the matter. So basically, I think what has made it very difficult to have this news fully resolved by all the workers coming together is the difference, the dynamics in the employers and the dynamics also in the different unions. Though the issues are quite common and actually will help all the doctors and other healthcare workers equally if they unite to fight for it.
Dr. We want to thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. I mean, it's just been, unfortunately, because of our technical issues, but we've had some good conversations with you. What we're hearing is that, there's clear and definite agitation, and there's what you want to see addressed for the plight of healthcare workers and also for the healthcare system in the country to ensure that it works. We need to have a conversation with the government at the national level, at the county level, so that then they can see what exactly is it that needs to be done to bring these issues to a close, to make sure that everybody can access healthcare wherever they go across the country. And these are conversations that we cannot stop having, and we always like and love and enjoy having conversations with professionals such as yourselves. We wish you a great day. Asanteni sana.
Thank you.
And it's time for us to take a break on KTN Home, Spice FM and online at 26 minutes past 7 o'clock. We'll be back shortly. Let's take a look at the weather and traffic. Good morning.
Spice FM.
Hey, it's getting hot in here. The media has greatly contributed to the moral rot that we experience in this country.
I remember a senior politician telling me, point blank, nobody steals in the field, it's stolen in the granary. So my friend, if you're going to win an election, jipange kwa granary.
I think we are suffering from Stockholm syndrome. Our violator and abuser is also our redeemer in our mind.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
All right, partly cloudy conditions in Nairobi this morning. The sun will peek through at some point. We'll go to highs of 26 and lows of 14 today. Nyeri is mostly sunny at 16, highs of 24 and lows of 11. We're looking at mostly cloudy conditions in Nakuru at 20 at the moment, going to highs of 26 and lows of 14. 11 will be the low in Eldoret today, mostly cloudy at the moment at 20, going to highs of 24. We're looking at highs of 26 in Kisumu, mostly cloudy at 20 at the moment. It's also cloudy at 20 in Kakamega, going to highs of 28 and lows of 15. 34 will be the high in Mombasa today, slightly cooler than yesterday. At 26, we'll see lows of 23. 26 is also sunny in Malindi. 33 the high and lows of 22. We're looking at cloudy conditions coming out of Kampala. 19 degrees, highs of 25 and lows of 18. Dar es Salaam is sunny this morning at 26, highs of 32. The high will be 26 in Johannesburg, sunny conditions at 13. Mostly cloudy in Lagos this morning, highs of 32 and lows of 24. While in Kinshasa, the rain continues to come down at 22. It'll rise to a high of 33. Come back to lows of 24.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice
right, so
up your
Garden
life.
City is piling up today. Moving further ahead and then connecting with Kiambu Road right around Muthaiga Corner. It's looking crazy, guys. It's a build-up of traffic this morning. Hopefully that'll open up, but understand we're right in the middle of traffic hours, so it doesn't look like it's getting any easier before 8 o'clock. All right, Mombasa Road coming from City Kamanos all the way to Kitengela. It's loading, guys, or Kitengela back there and then heading up towards the SGR. Very, very slow this morning. Bumper to bumper situations is what we're experiencing. Coming out of Westlands also towards the CBD. You can use the Red Hill bypass because that is slow as well. Langata Road heading towards town. Very slow as well. Coming and connecting from the bypass. So traffic has picked up considerably. Let's be careful wherever we're going this morning. Let us know if you run into anything, and that could be an open road as well. Spice FMKE on Twitter or text on 40127.
spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings.
It's now 7:30. This is Kenya's
94.4.
The Situation Room on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. In the room this morning is Eric Latif, CT Muga Nduoko, and our guest host for today, she's back, Dr. Mercy Korir, the Standard Group editor in charge of health and science. So we're having a conversation about the healthcare system in the country. We've just had a conversation with two doctors, union leaders for KMPDU from various parts of the country, Nyanza and the South Rift. Now, we'll have a conversation next with one of the founder members of this particular union. But let's look at what's the history of this, Dr. Mercy. 2011, union is formed. Then you have had all these conversations with the national government, with the county governments, back and forth. Like you said, there are issues that are to do with the collective bargaining agreements that are signed. And then there are other issues that are to do with basically just bad behavior or misbehavior of an employer. You have been paid. You are given a pay slip, you have been deducted statutory deductions and others, and yet those are not being remitted. So those are just two different issues. What kind of picture is this painting on the government and the state of affairs?
I don't know what to make of that, because I mean it should be criminal for an employer not to remit some of these things. Imagine being listed at CRB because you've defaulted, yet you've not even eaten that money, if I may call it that. You've not seen a cent of that money that you're told you've been defaulted. Your pay slip says, it's been deducted. So for me, some of these things are really administrative issues that county government should be able to solve. If they say they're in control of their counties, we are the big men here, we know what we are doing, then those are small matters in which they can resolve, they can solve. And there's, I think it was Suri who said, if we look at the issues around the healthcare sector, before devolution, it was easier to have discussions and conversations because you are dealing with one ministry of health, Ministry of Labor. Then devolution happened, and now you have, and the Public Service Commission. Now you're dealing with 47 county governments with 47 different personalities and peoples, 47 different, health dockets, county public service boards. So it becomes even more difficult and more complex. And that's why you see in Kirinyaga, Laikipia, they fired their doctors and they've not even bothered to hire them back, and their healthcare workers. So there are two sides to these things, before devolution, 2013, and after devolution. Before devolution, there was just that one strike in 2011, which now really put doctors at a different pay scale altogether. And then from 2013, they started there, and now it's been one after the other. So I really don't know what would solve these issues. People have said the BBI will do that because it's supposed to solve all of our problems. People have said having a health service commission.
Yeah.
You're wondering how the BBI. I don't know. Also.
Well, I don't know. It seems like
it's
like you're cooking something and then it's salt that's
in, and then
you throw BBI into everything, and then it's supposed to bring some flavor to the soup. But anyway, if we're looking at the formation of the KMPDU at the time, between 2011 and 2021, where we are now, have we been able to see significant strides that have been made by virtue of the existence of this union? Has it become better when we are looking at the conditions for health workers in the country, by what they've been able to do when it comes to agitation before government? Has it improved greatly?
For the healthcare workers, definitely it has. For its membership, I mean, when we were starting internship, luckily I was one of the first recipients of the fruits of the KMPDU. I think our take home at the time maybe about 90, 100. Now people are at double those digits.
That's 200 to 300.
Yeah, so it has definitely improved for that person who is a recipient of the direct fruits of, what the union is agitating for. But I think, in my opinion, there are two things. There's the healthcare workers and their welfare, their remuneration. That's a whole other conversation. But the bigger problem for me is our state of the healthcare system, in which I may be well remunerated, but if I'm not working because I do not have gloves, for example, or I'm a radiologist and I don't have a CT scan in which to report, then of what use is this lofty pay?
Yeah.
So it has to be both. So I think it's about time. If I were in the county, for example, and I was a governor in charge of health, I would be looking at making you busy because I'm paying you. So make sure that the facilities are well equipped. Make sure that everything is running. You know, what you need is there, so that you don't have to come and say, I cannot go to work because
there's no equipment.
Exactly.
But then when you look at it now from this other side of the public, when the doctors go on strike and 1, 2, 3 of the 12-point agenda that they're going on strike over is about healthcare. I mean, it's about their salary, their allowance for this, their medical cover for this and the other. And then those are the issues of then making sure that there's a healthcare system that is working are number 11 and 12. You see, that's where now the public starts to lose in this conversation. Because it sounds like you are going on strike for better pay, for better allowances. And it gives the governors that ammunition to use that and say, these guys are still going on strike about pay. It gives the president that ammunition to go and say, look at how much we're paying our healthcare workers. Even if you compare to doctors in mission hospitals, they are actually earning very well. So they can say, in the last 11 years or so of this union, their pay has really improved.
Eric, the work of the union first is their members' welfare and their members' mandate. If the union was not there agitating for their membership, there would be a problem, because those are your, when you have a company, those are your articles of association, or what is it called, those things. That is what you're supposed to do, agitate for your members.
Yep.
And if you look at currently what we are talking about, it's about implement the promotions we talked about in 2017, implement the allowances that we talked about in 2017. It's not even anything new. It's something that if the counties had wanted, they would have put into their budgets, or they would have implemented. They wouldn't be talking here just stamping about how even if you go on strike for 100 years, we won't implement. So for me, I see them very two different issues. The unions are doing their job, which is being there for their members. But on this other side, the governments need to do their work, which is to make sure that these people work and deliver to Wananchi. And if we now open that box, it's a whole Pandora's box of problems and issues where it's a whole other problem. So for me, the conversations are two different things here altogether.
Okay. Let's bring in our guest and you can introduce him to our audience. Dr. Chitai is on the line now, Dr. Boniface Chitai. Good morning, Dr.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us, and welcome to the Situation Room on Spice FM and KTN Home and online.
Thank you for having me.
So introduce the doc.
Okay. Good morning, Dr. Chitai. Mercy Korir here. So Chitai was one of the founder members and Secretary General of the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Union. And I remember I think it was either the eve or the Jamhuri Day of 12th, can only be 12th December 2011, where he signed an agreement with the then national government that gave doctors at least a good pay rise. So he, in the history of KMPDU, Dr. Chitai has his own chapter about what he did for the union. So, Daktari, karibu sana. And we are wondering here loudly why the issues seem to be either escalating or not being solved. What have been the issues?
Yes, I think Dr. Korir, is very important for us to appreciate the environment in the healthcare sector prior to 2011. What was really happening in the health sector? there are many challenges. One of them was inadequate staff. The other challenge was lack of equipment, few hospitals, and all these challenges. Understaffed, health workers, overworked, and those kinds of challenges. One other problem was that a lot of doctors who are being trained were leaving the country, and we had very few doctors in the public sector. And that was one of the challenges at that point when we had that strike. And so in 2011, one can remember that when KMPDU was formed, its grievances constituted about 13 items that were presented during the strike to be resolved. And a lot of these grievances, some of them were to be addressed immediately. Something was to be done immediately. Some of them were seen to be long-term, and so that required more investment. And this discussion happened between KMPDU and the government. To be honest, a lot for KMPDU, they were doing this for the first time, maybe some of the government officials as well. Labor relations had not been, the Labor Relations Act, for example, had not been well understood by even some of the government officials. And it was sort of a learning process. How do you handle a strike? People didn't really know. And a lot of times it was thought that, that this is illegal. But after that strike, there was an improvement of the environment generally in the health sector. There was some slight increment in the allowances. You remember the call allowances, extraneous allowances, and there was also the Musimi task force that was established to address some really of the issues that were long-term, employment of doctors and other health workers. And it was really all health workers, improved infrastructure. So we came and did a very good plan of how that should be done and costed it and so on. And so, down the line, then we just had devolution after the 2013 elections. And there was a short period of improved environment where there was even some sort of reverse brain drain, where doctors who had left public service, going to private, and maybe some leaving the country, were expressing intentions of coming back. So it was a very a good working environment for a few years until now we had devolution. And then now after devolution, a lot of the things we had agreed were forgotten. For example, the Musimi Task Force report, there was no motivation by the counties to implement it. And so we had every county doing, running healthcare in its own way, and there were lots of problems. So that the previous agreement that we've had was totally disregarded, and then you had new challenges of health workers again. There are issues of employment. Some of them being arbitrarily sacked, some of them not being promoted. The employment stalling, of new workers, and all these challenges, and also issues of infrastructure were again forgotten, or at least even if they happened, they were haphazard. So some counties were doing something, others were not doing something, and so we have all these challenges that have persisted. But the worst of the worst, I think, in terms of the devolution of healthcare, is how generally health workers have been mishandled. For lack of a better word, the hostility against health workers in nearly all the counties, with failure to resolve very simple issues, delays of payments. These are now chronic issues. And now where we are, we've gone back to pre-2011. So now we are in a situation where health workers are again leaving the health sector, the public health sector. So we are now going back to understaffed public health sector, and of course infrastructural development. There's really not much to write home about that, since the Musimi Task Force report has never also been devolved alongside the devolution of healthcare, and so the challenges really remain.
Dr. Tide, from the time that you sat at the leadership of the union and how you've seen things evolve over the last 9 to 10 years. Has there been a significant difference in the agitation? And I'm not just talking about things that have been made better for healthcare workers in the country. I'm talking about the character of the agitation. In that, have people started to, or those in situations of change and influence, have they been able to see the union as the one that will implement development in the country? Or has it continually been that it's a union of troublemakers who come to make noise every now and then and force our hand in terms of making any kind of change? Have you seen a change in the character of developments?
No, the approach should be that a trade union is a constitutional right of workers. So all workers have a right to form a trade union, join, recruit members, and the structure is very well laid out in the Labor Relations Act that as an employer, if I have a group of workers, they're allowed to form a union, and once they reach over 50% or a simple majority, I recognize them and they can negotiate collectively. And the role of a union in any society is to help with structured negotiations. Also, it's also supposed to be to bring stability, really, so that strikes are fewer. Because if strikes were to happen spontaneously because of accumulation of grievances, generally those strikes tend to be very difficult to resolve, and they could end up with a lot of challenges, either sacking. Could be some sackings and so on, but also the employers they can lose labor because there's the issue of you've trained some workers, but then if they leave your establishment, then there's a loss on your part. So there's labor relations that should be appreciated, and challenges often arise when agreements are not implemented. In this country, there is no single collective bargaining agreement that has ever been implemented. Even if you go to Kenya National Union of Teachers, one of the oldest unions, they could still be grappling with return to work formulas and collective agreements that they made with the Moi government. So the government is extremely slow in implementing agreements in the absence of agitation.
So has it become more difficult? This is the crux. Has it become more difficult, or has it been easier to bring these points out to a government that can make changes? Has it become more difficult?
Well, my assessment is that the government, including county governments, are becoming more and more hostile towards unions, and they're trying to, they're playing hardball more and more, with subsequent strikes. They're using more draconian methods, of sackings, but also simply some don't care attitude as emerged, as opposed to maybe when we negotiated with Uhuru as a finance minister and Dalmas Otieno as a Minister for State for Public Service. There was some urgency. Okay, there were some threats here and there, but then there was also some urgency to resolve these issues. But because issues have piled upon issues and we've had some becoming chronic, then we have a situation where also the governors generally and the government has become more insensitive to some of these challenges. And you look at some counties, you realize that delay in salaries is now a norm. Delay. Just you've worked at the end of the month, you don't get your salary on time. So, where if you count right now in Kenya, probably there are some 20 or so counties where workers have gone for lack of pay without any problem, without any agitation, without any communication. They have not been paid for 2+ months. You see, that kind of situation really is not conducive for good labor relations.
Definitely.
And if you look at even the last collective bargaining agreement, right now it's in court. If you look at the return to work formula of 2011, some clauses were implemented, but then even the call allowance we negotiated some officers in the Ministry of Health went out of their way to ensure that some doctors do not receive it, creating a sense of disenchantment, creating a sense of dissatisfaction, because we agreed with them that this call allowance will have, all doctors will receive this call allowance.
Dr. Let me ask you this question, if I may.
But then,
as a Kenyan,
like a divide and rule kind of thing,
as a Kenyan, as an individual who lives in this country, some of these promises or some of these understandings that you've arrived at with the government, when they are not met, is it that the government is simply playing hardball and refusing to implement them, or in some cases, do you understand them not to be able to implement some of these things?
Well, the government could speak for itself, but a lot of these agreements are arrived at after very long negotiations. For example, the 2011 agreement was negotiated for close to 3 or so weeks. Now, that was a long period of negotiations, with negotiations almost every day, and sometimes really extensive and lengthy, going into the night and so on. Before the government makes offers, they always make consultations within, and people who make decisions on behalf of government have the power to make the negotiations, to get into the agreement based on the resources available. And so I cannot say that the agreements are not honored because of lack of funds on the part of government, but government can speak for itself. But from the part of the union, this environment that is created because agreements are not honored makes it very difficult. And that's why you find that at some point, workers are hesitant to return to work during a strike. And
Dr. What I'm saying is this: an agreement may follow the same route that you have actually clearly stated. But if a promise was made 2 years ago before COVID, and now we have COVID, surely, given what COVID is doing, it is clear the government is not able to actually meet some of those things. This is the sort of situation I'm talking about. You may have signed something in the Moi government. 2 years down the line, the government is simply not in a position to fulfill the promises that they made. So the question I'm asking is, do people get together and discuss the realities of the situation, or is it that when you go on strike, the government finds the easiest route, and that is now to either consider it illegal or to threaten or to intimidate? That's really what I'm asking.
Yeah, but I think using COVID is an extremely lame excuse, and I think they have not used it, but you're using it on their behalf. But it's a very
I'm actually not using it. I'm giving it as an example, Daktari.
But the challenges were there before COVID. Now I'm giving you the reason why COVID is not the reason. The challenges were there before COVID. And even if COVID was a reason, then it's the responsibility of the employer to come back and say, we made this agreement with you, but we may not be able to fulfill it, or this is what we would like to renegotiate the past agreement so that maybe we prolong the time of implementation. And I think you find that such communication is missing completely. So you find that we just find that the agreements have not been implemented. You find CBAs having been negotiated expiring. For example, the 2017 CBA is expiring soon, but a lot of it has not been implemented, and so this creates a lot of mistrust. Once you have mistrust, then you cannot have good labor relations.
Has the government ever actually implemented anything that you've agreed on?
Well, there's some implementation within the return to work formula, like for 2011. Although I can say that we were unhappy because it was not fully implemented to cover all doctors. And up to now, there is a lot of continuing agitation and continuing something that should have been resolved long time ago. We continue to agitate that it be implemented. But anyway, looking at overall, in terms of implementation, to be honest, I look at return to work formulas at the moment, and you find that the government seems to be just happy when they sign a return, or when they have a sign a return to work formula about there'll be no victimization, salaries will be paid. These kinds of things that do not address the issues why people go on strike, and some of these pile up, and unless government agrees to rethink its labor relations, how it's relating to its workers, because at the end of the day, it will be worse off without even the union, because the consequences of that could be resignation, health workers leaving the country, like it's bound to happen right now.
Yeah.
And the challenges will be that as our population grows, our population is growing, and as it grows, if we don't have health care, we cannot eradicate poverty in this country.
Let's
and
take a
therefore,
break.
even some of our sustainable goals will not be attained.
Let's take a break. We're having a conversation with Dr. Boniface Chitai. He is the founding Secretary General of the KMPDU, that's the Doctors Union. We're looking at the historical perspective of the doctors and healthcare workers going on strike and the state of our healthcare system in the country. What has been negotiated? What has been agreed? What has not been implemented? What needs to be implemented? Time for us to take a break on KTN Home as we continue this conversation on Spice FM. We'll be back shortly.
87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
Yeah, so the conversation continues with Dr. Boniface Chitai, the founding Secretary General of the Union, just giving us that historical perspective. And the issues that you're raising, Dr. are quite weighty and lengthy. And Ndu, I think you wanted to ask him a question just before we took a break.
Sure. I think, unfortunately, what we are looking at here is a situation whereby all of these issues could be watered down to money. The general populace now would look at these conversations that are being had between government and unions and health workers and say, well, you know what? Essentially, all these folks want is money to go back to work, because that's what it's going to look like. And I think with every opportunity that is presented, that it should be to be able to say it's a lot more, than just money in the pockets. We're looking at trying to have a more robust health system, trying to make sure that, yes, health workers are taken care of, but that they're also able to give the right output when it comes to taking care of the sick in the country. How can we, Dr. Chitai, say that it is more than money? It's more than just putting an extra shilling in the pockets of doctors, but we're looking at buffering the whole system, because truth be told, Kenyans are saying right now, okay, so what's the problem? Doctors want more money? Give them money so that we can, either the one side will say, give them money so we can continue, or the other side will say, come on, guys, there was a strike before they gave you more money, so what's the problem? So how can we make sure that this conversation does not go that way? And it's just, come on, it's more than money, isn't it? Doctor, are you there?
Dr. Chitai.
He
seemed to have.
He went on break.
He took a break as well. Yeah.
Does it not appear from the conversation we are having that the evolution has been terrible for doctors?
Sure.
It has.
This is the time when doctors say pay has moved from 40,000 shillings to 300,000 shillings.
That was before devolution.
It was before devolution.
Just a couple of years before devolution, surely.
It was still before devolution.
Eric, you had to merge it. Since it was just a few years ago, so it must have been within the arena. No, it was before devolution.
It was still before devolution, because then what happened was that once we were devolved, then the counties picked up from where the national government had picked up. So I think it's been... I think there are pros and cons to devolution of the health sector. And in terms of health workers, labor relations, I think it has been difficult. And if you could pick from what Chitai was talking about, was that, every county government is running healthcare in a way that they think is the best. And for me, I think it is a failure of the parent ministry, which is the Ministry of Health, because according to the Schedule 4 of the Constitution, the Ministry of Health is supposed to be, in charge of policy.
Should be looking at putting policy and having a national framework that then is implemented across
board
by each county.
For me, the buck stops at the Ministry of Health, because it has failed in making sure that there are standards across board. There are all of these things that everyone follows, so that we are all equal and the same.
But the question
coming to the top of the hour, as we look at traffic and then we come back into this conversation, we have Dr. Boniface Chitai. We'll keep him on the line a bit longer as we try and unravel what exactly has been happening in our healthcare system. We'd like you to also participate in the conversation on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. What do you see happening in our healthcare system? What would you like to see happen better. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. It is the Situation Room. It's now 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM. Kisumu. Traffic.
Okay, so Sugar Road is still getting to the CBD, a bit of a clog up right around the Pangani Tunnel. You can use Wangari Maathai Road to get into the CBD if you're stuck right around Pangani, and then getting to the Globe Cinema overpass. It's going to take you some time. That we know that the construction still continues on Tomboya Street. Limuru Road, traffic starts at the Australian Embassy. People are crying some premium tears this morning. It's going to take some time to get out of that one. Then out there past Village Market, past the embassies, and then out towards the Aga Khan Hospital. Very slow. Wangari Maathai Road is another option for you to get out of that mess. All right, let's go Jogo Road. Getting towards Landys Road, out from the stadium roundabout. Should be able to get into CBD. It's going to take you a few minutes. It's slowing down there. As everybody tries to get into the CBD, but it shouldn't be too terrible. Okay, looking at Langata Road, coming then to the Timor roundabout. Bagadi Way is an option to get out, and then out through Valley Road, because you're going to slow down again right around the Hu Highway as you approach the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. So we're still looking at traffic hour right now, about half an hour or so, still going to be in the thick of things. Let us know if you get stuck anywhere. Talk to us on Spice FMKE on Twitter or text 40127.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The
Thank you
only
very much
way
for
to
keeping
start
it right
your
here
day.
on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. The conversation continues. In addition to Eric Latif, Siti Muga Nduoko, we also have the Standard Group editor in charge of health and science, Dr. Mercy Korir. Let's start the hour with today's proverb.
Well, an agama lizard in the village will remain an agama lizard in town.
Agama lizard village, agama lizard town.
Same.
And you're asking for similar proverbs in Swahili or elsewhere. So I've seen a couple of responses on social media. One says, mtoto wa nyoka ni nyoka.
Well, it's really very close, yes.
That's
Close,
right.
yeah.
And the other one is a rose by any other name.
Smells the same. Man, those are very, very good examples.
Those are, yeah.
Those are excellent examples. I've often wondered why it's only mtoto wa nyoka ni nyoka. I've never heard of mtoto wa panya ni panya.
Mtoto wa ndege ni mayai.
Hey.
Whoa. That's an moment.
Mtoto wa ndege ni mayai. Okay, we continue the conversation with Dr. Boniface Chitai, founder, Secretary General of the KMPDU, that's the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union. And as we were going into the break, before we took a look at what's happening on the roads, Dr. Chitai, the question was, how can we bring the conversation to the bigger conversation about healthcare, even as we look at for example, the report that was done by the task force. This was by the Musimi task force. Okay, Musimi task force was formed in response to what the KMPDU had raised to the government. Then the Musimi task force came in with several recommendations on what can happen to improve the state of the healthcare. Now, many of the things in the Musimi task force have not been implemented fully or even well, or some of them have not even been started at all. But the conversations that we keep hearing whenever doctors are agitating or having taking the limelight in the headlines is about implementation of collective bargaining agreements, about pay, about allowances. How can we bring the conversation into the bigger picture on what is contained in the Musimi Task Force report? Daktari.
Yes, just let me take you back. Thank you very much. It's good to go back to the Musimi Task Force report and ask, okay, what had KMPDU requested, or what were the KMPDU main asks in that report? So one of them was touching on health facilities, the number of health facilities in the country. So we were trying to ask the government to implement the norms and standards that every Kenyan should have a health facility at least within a 5-kilometer radius. Medical equipment and medical products, that the level of equipment in a hospital should be improved, and the laboratory should be equipped, and medication should be available, and human resource, that the norms and standards again of the government, that a health center should have this number of doctors, this number of clinical officers, this number of nurses, that should be implemented. Then issues of health services commission, that you need a health services commission to actually manage the human resources for health, so that because human resources for health are scarce, then they should be shared across the country. You should not have a situation where maybe one county may have more health workers than the other. So a health services commission would help to balance that out, and so on. But there's this overarching issue that actually becomes the elephant in the room, and this is health sector financing.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that there has been underinvestment in the health sector for many years. You can remember myself and Dr. Ngani going around in different media houses to educate the public about something called the Abuja Declaration. And the Abuja Declaration was this agreement where governments committed to at least give 15% of the budget to healthcare. And from our discussions, even during the Musimi Task Force report, was that doesn't have to be done at once, that you can do it progressively. Just increase it until you get to 15%. And there are, of course, countries with better healthcare who have implemented that Abuja Declaration, giving 15%. Some give even more than 15% to healthcare. And you find that, then healthcare, it's about money, but it's not just money for salaries for health workers. The money to healthcare should go to all these things, strengthening the healthcare sector in general, improving infrastructure, and so on. So that was our argument then, that 15%, let it be given to healthcare. But what has happened, if you look at the budgetary allocation to healthcare over the years, before and after 2011, it has been stuck to around 6%. So that even when you go to counties, apart from the money that the counties pay for salaries of health workers, there's very little allocation to improve and develop the health infrastructure in the counties. So the problem of underinvestment and prioritization of healthcare continues, and that's one of the challenges.
So how can we make that the main conversation,
right,
as opposed to a conversation about where the governors will be pushing back by saying, you see, we have paid you, we don't have enough, we don't have any more money that we can allocate. We have to look at all the cadres of healthcare workers. How can we bring that conversation into how much budgetary allocation are you putting in health? How much have you invested in health, in improving the healthcare system in the country? How do we make that the main conversation?
Yeah, the thing is that we have to have more actors than just the health workers agitating for improved healthcare, because improved healthcare is a resource for all of us. And when I have a good hospital near my home, even if it's rural, it helps my brothers, sisters, and relatives who live there. And every part of Kenya deserves to have good healthcare system, and therefore we should feel that it's our responsibility to lobby. Even our elected leaders. Probably there have been conversations about having healthcare also feature prominently in pre-election conversation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are our leaders making promises about healthcare, and what are these promises? what are they saying they'll invest in healthcare? What kind of system are they saying? What kind of reforms in healthcare are they saying they're going to bring pre-election? And if we can have this conversation and lobbying after elections to make sure that some of these promises are implemented, then we may have a chance at improving our healthcare system.
Dr. There's something I'd like to ask. Since you've been at this business of fighting for rights for some time, do you know if the Ministry of Health actually allocates sufficient monies to cater for the healthcare needs in all the counties? I know it is a treasury issue, but there's a reason why I'm asking this. Because the Ministry of Health still receives monies. It does. But does it have a say in how much money the counties actually get for healthcare?
I would say no, though this is not really my conversation, but I mean, you need to bring COG to weigh in this conversation and the Ministry of Health itself. But these are arguments that have happened. But from the allocation of the counties themselves, the question is how much do they prioritize healthcare? Because healthcare is one of the major functions that was devolved. How much do they prioritize healthcare in their budgeting? Are we having an effort to at least get to 15%, for example, of their budget? And that would be a good question, both at the national level and at the county level.
So the money issue, how I see it, it's not just about allocating their budget declaration 15%, but when you allocate, what are you using this money for? You may allocate, yes, but then you go into, workshops and meetings and per diems, so it doesn't, translate to development. So what I've seen happen is the ministry, let's say, gets about 5-6% of the national budget to the Ministry of Health. The counties, out of their equitable share, the other day when we had a forum with the county governors, they were almost complaining that almost half of each county's budget is going to health. And I was wondering why they are complaining, yet when you look at the kind of resources or what was devolved, health sector was a bulk of what was devolved. And half of the workforce in the counties is health workforce. So obviously it goes without saying, it's obvious that, a lot of your money in the budget will go into the healthcare space. But now when you drill down, so there will be maybe about 25 to 50% of the different county budgets goes into healthcare. But when you break down into now the actual figures, the monies are still very little. If you get $1 billion probably in your health sector, for example, half of that will go into recurrent expenditure, then the rest will go into development. So if you look at that 500 million, for example, that you have to now use for development, and this is equipping your facilities, making sure that these pharmaceuticals and non-pharmaceuticals are there, and some of the things, your oxygen plants and all of those things, those are things that are capital intensive. So when you break down to the actual shillings, it is not enough. So for me, and this is the conversation that I was trying to say earlier or to have earlier, is that for me, the buck stops at the Ministry of Health.
What does it do with that money that it has received?
Okay, so there's that. But more pertinent to me is you're supposed to set the standards and norms and all of these things, policies that are supposed to be taken by all the 47 county governments so that they can implement. And within that, then the conversation on how much to resource the healthcare sector can come in, where that money should go can come in. Even conversations on ring fencing these funds into the health sector. The health system in Thailand, for example, which is where we want to copy the UHC, has the monies coming in from the government going to the health facility. And from the health facility, that is where you manage your funds and you know where to put the money. But in our case, the money goes into the county pot. So from the county port, now they decide, okay, no, maybe building
This
a
year,
road would be more
yeah.
important than, resourcing the health sector. So with the money conversation, we need to have it from A to Z. Where is the money coming from? How much is this money and where is it going? Do we want to, with all the problems that we've seen, do we want to have our money going into the county ports, or do we rather trust it with the professionals who are running the health facilities? So I think the money conversation, as Chitai said, is even bigger. And Daktari, before we let you go on that, on the vaccine, yesterday the Director General for WHO had what I think is an important conversation, that you have the wealthier countries have had vaccinations even up to the young people. Yet in the poorer countries, and there was a map, Africa has not had any vaccine, for example. Do you see this vaccine coming into the country for COVID?
Well, there was that promise that was made that the government will purchase vaccines for the country. But on our part as the citizens, it's very important that this is the time to remind the government that it's their responsibility to purchase this vaccine on our behalf. Whatever negotiation goes on for the vaccine to come, it's up to the government to work that out. But as a healthcare worker, it's very important that since the vaccine is already, there are several vaccines actually in the market, that is important that at least the government makes plans because we are still seeing a lot of challenges with COVID in some of our countries. I was looking at what's happening in Rwanda right now, and it's very difficult to predict what may happen even in Kenya. So and the vaccine is the most reliable solution. So as a healthcare worker and as a citizen of this country, I would like to remind the government that it's their responsibility and they should do this with speed. They should prioritize. If government can prioritize it, we can get the vaccines and our people can be protected against the disease.
Dr. Boniface Chitai, thank you very much for speaking to us this morning. We wish you a great day. Dr. Boniface Chitai was the founder, Secretary General of KMPDU. Asante sana.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as we continue with this, just piggybacking on the question that you've asked, Doc, about vaccines, and let's just move into that. So the government has said that by tomorrow, they'll release now this whole information on what is going to take place about vaccine, and they've already started, sharing out the information on what the plan is for vaccine. How does that plan look like?
I have been looking for that plan for the longest time, since last year when they said we'll get the vaccine in Feb, because internationally and looking at the conversations happening beyond our borders, personally, I think February is a bit ambitious to get the vaccine. So I would want to see what the government's plan is. That, February is just like a week away. I would want to see what that plan is, or what the miracle has been that will get it in February. But most important to me is, okay, when the vaccine comes here and we know how this country behaves, will there be some sanity in the distribution of the vaccine, or the rollout of the vaccine? Or will we start seeing money talking instead of, sense and logic happening? So I would really, really want to see what that plan by the government is, so that we can hold them accountable in case anything goes wrong. Because what we've seen other countries do is that they started with their frontline healthcare workers, and all their healthcare workers were vaccinated. Then they've gone to now age groups, elder populations. And in that age group, they had 80s, over 70. There was a plan in how they were distributing this because of the kind of harm COVID-19 has on some of these people. So I'm very curious to see what the plan by the government is. And then the third one is, which vaccine is it getting? There was a conversation about the government considering the Chinese vaccine. I don't know if we're also considering the Sputnik, the Russian vaccine. I don't know. In the country, we've been doing trials on the Pfizer. Not Pfizer, Oxford vaccine. So, and from the conversations globally, that is the vaccine that would make sense in a country like ours, because you can store it at normal fridge temperatures, as opposed to the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, which needs ultra cold temperatures. So is that what is under consideration?
I think it's beyond consideration now, because I think Mutahi Kagwe actually went ahead and said that they have ordered for 24 million doses of the Oxford vaccine. They've already gone ahead and done this. And this is what they expect to be coming to the country in February, right? And so in terms of their plan, the order has already happened.
This is through
the
Africa
is the one that's
CDC.
going to come in, yes. This is what is going to come in. And they have said that they're going to start with health workers from the beginning. And just looking at this report that's been done, but we heard that from the vaccines that will come in February, it's the Oxford one that they were going to go for that very reason, that they will be able to store it at these temperatures. They're already looking at how much it's going to cost, an estimate of 220 shillings. They're looking at 2 doses per person. They already know that they will start with health workers, which they've already looked at the numbers. 257,542 health workers are targeted. The elderly population, and they say elderly here above 50 years, 11% of the total population. So they're looking at administering the vaccine to 5 million of the elderly population, and then population living with comorbidities, 4.4 million, right? So those are the numbers that they're looking at, and they're saying that from this first consignment that they will get next month, these are the people that they're going to start with. They're saying that the vaccine is currently being tested by KEMRI at the moment. And after that, they hope to go on with this.
These figures that are, it's the report in the Nation today, right? So who are these figures being attributed to? Is it somebody at the Ministry of Health? So Health CS Mutahi Kagwe has said something. There's a task force that has been set up to work on the rollout of the vaccines.
Same task force that's supposed to be giving us this communication this week. It was to be tomorrow, Wednesday, that we are supposed to be getting this information of exactly how they're going to work this out.
Right.
Yes.
So they have been saying it in different fora when we pose questions to them in their reports. So they've been saying it, hinting and saying. So what I will still look at that. There was COVID-19 vaccine distribution and deployment plan.
Yeah,
that probably is now what these things were coming from piecemeal. So it's what we need to see and we need to know.
So basically, what we're saying is the government is working on something behind the scenes. There's a team that's been set up. It's working on what it's going to do, how the vaccines are going to arrive, how they're going to be rolled out. There's a document that's going to be prepared by a technical team of, experts that's going to work on this. And then you shall come to some of those things that we were talking to Professor Omwenzala about. So when it comes to the actual vaccination, where is it going to happen? Who's going to be vaccinated? By whom? If you have all your nurses on strike countrywide, so who is it that is going to actually do the jabbing? So if you have the 5.3 million people above 50 years of age countrywide, are you telling all of them that you're going to get it within this time? Are you saying that it's going to start county by county? And if it's county by county, if it's Nairobi County, where in Nairobi County are you expecting the 50 plus and the healthcare workers to come to get the vaccination? Or are you going door to door? All this information will be very critical. I think that's where now the detail comes in.
That's where that plan now is important. And that's where it comes in, so that that information is out there. So that you're able to know. And if you're saying it's Nairobi, for example, why Nairobi and not Turkana? Those are the kind of things that the team behind it and the technical team should have been able to have, come up with and agreed upon.
But even as we talk about procuring the vaccine, there are other avenues that people have used to procure vaccine. Israel, for example, part of their negotiation with the Pfizer vaccine is that they will be giving Pfizer the data of the vaccination from their citizenry. Right? Now, if we roll out the vaccination, there will be data that is collected. Now, that data is actually important for the manufacturers of the vaccine to actually know. Meaning, it's not just value, but there is a cost value added
Currency.
to it. Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much, Eric. There's currency in that particular data. Okay. So, have we considered? I'm just adding to that lovely muddle of things that we've actually been discussing. Yes.
And even when you say we are buying, I wouldn't hold my breath on buying. If it's a donation, I can agree. Seeing how we have been behaving with the COVID response and monies around it. So if we are buying, does it mean we are buying additional vaccines, other vaccines doses in addition to what we have put an offer with the WHO COVAX, which was going to give 20% of each low and middle income country, 20% of its population will get X number of those doses
For free.
For free, yes, which is about 20% of our population is what? About 10 million, which is about the 24 million that they are talking about. So if the government is buying, I hope we are not buying what is being donated to us.
Well, we hope that this 220 shillings that you decide.
Oh, ye of little faith.
Right? So, if
Let's
it
take a
is the
break.
Gavi, sorry, but you will buy.
Let's take a break.
We'll buy what
When
is
we come back,
donated.
Dr. Mercy has some misgivings. We'll hear those misgivings of Dr. Mercy's on this particular one. We are now discussing COVID-19 vaccination. So the government is telling us, all right, so from around February, we'll have a conversation about starting to roll out vaccination for COVID-19. The plans around that. So that's the conversation we'll be having. Time for us to take a break. 27 minutes after 8. We are on Spice FM, on KTN Home and online. We will be back shortly after taking a look at the weather and the traffic.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.
The Spice Drive.
Did you have a great day? I hope you did. I intend to make it better from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. I'm going to be taking you home nice and chill. Everyone is welcome aboard. The hashtag is Spice Drive and, of course, Spice FMKE.
The weather with Spice
All right, sunny
FM.
conditions in Nairobi this morning. 26 degrees is the high and lows of 14 today. There's a high chance of rain later, but we'll have to wait and see. Mostly cloudy conditions this morning in Nyeri at 16, highs of 24 and lows of 11. 14 will be the low in Nakuru today, where it's mostly cloudy at 20, going to a high of 26. 24 will be the high in Eldoret. Mostly cloudy at the moment at 20. It's also 20 in Kisumu. Highs of 26 and lows of 18. We're looking at some cloudy conditions in Kakamega. Highs of 28 and lows of 15. 34 is the high today in Mombasa. It's mostly sunny at the moment at 26. And Malindi is sunny as well at 26, going to highs of 33. Mostly cloudy conditions in Kampala will take you to highs of 28 and lows of 18. We're in Dar es Salaam, mostly sunny, highs of 32 and lows of 26. It's sunny in Johannesburg at 15, highs of 26 and lows of 16. While in Lagos, it's partly cloudy, highs of 32 and lows of 24. Kinshasa continues to rain this morning at 22. It'll go to highs of 33 and lows of 24.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Okay, don't use the service lanes coming out of Survey on Thika Road this morning. If you can avoid it, don't do it. Stick on the major highway. It's going to take you some time, but this is where you will not get stuck. Folks who've used the service lane this morning don't seem to be going anywhere, unfortunately. Githurai is a mess. Now, the hawkers, the cyclists, the roundabouts, everywhere. Add the traffic this morning. It's not going anywhere this morning, so unfortunately very, very slow. Remember that you can use Wangari Maathai Highway as you get eventually out of that, going then towards the city centre. Coming out of Westlands, looking a little bit better now. You can still use the Red Hill bypass, that's not a problem. The Eastern bypass today, not looking so good. The Southern, however, is looking fantastic until, of course, you get to Langata Road, where things slow down considerably as you're trying to get into the CBD. So, Shall we take it easy this morning? Let's try. Spice FM KE on Twitter. Just in case you get stuck somewhere, we'll be able to give you an alternate route, or at least keep you company. Spice FM KE on Twitter, 40127 via text.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The conversation continues. In the room this morning is CT Muga Nduoko, Eric Latif, and Dr. Mercy Korir. We're now having a conversation about, the rollout of the vaccine that's expected to happen in the coming weeks. So what are your misgivings, Dr. Eric?
No, it's just the questions that we are raising, and I think this is still one of those areas where we need absolute transparency from the Ministry of Health and from the government. And the questions we are raising, one, where are you getting these vaccines from? If it's AstraZeneca, Oxford, which is the preferred one, how many doses exactly, not just a figure thrown around. The 24 million is the 20% COVAX under the Gavi, the WHO plan, and those are donated, or those ones will be gotten for those particular countries.
That's global CSR.
Yes. So if the country is buying, we need to know, where are you buying, how many other doses of vaccines are you buying, and where from are you buying, how much will the citizens incur. The other bit, which is still part of the vaccine, it's one thing to procure the vaccines, but how do they get to that person who needs that jab? What is that supply chain going to look like? Who are the parties involved in there? Because knowing how this country operates, you would need somebody obviously to transport, so you never know what will happen in there. You will need this
to be
stored somewhere. You never know what will happen in there. And then the other thing, and hopefully we don't go this route where we were still charged to be tested for COVID-19. So I hope, since we know 20% from Gavi is free, that people will not be charged, all in the name of, transport, logistics, whatever.
How will you know?
It's just a small fee.
How will you know?
That's what I'm saying. I'm just hoping that people will not be charged to get the vaccine.
It's free, but now, because of the transportation and clearance and all these things, it's just a small fee.
But by the way, this clearance that you're talking about, is it not the government that clears things?
It is.
Is it not also the government that can give tax exemption? Surely.
Can give.
But
yes, they can.
Say it is broke.
It's government.
Transporting it from there to here is a private airline.
Let them pay for it. We have already paid for that drug. We pay taxes every day, direct, indirect, and some we don't even understand or know. So we have done our bit. Let the government do its bit.
The national airline can go and bring us the vaccine.
The national carrier.
The national carrier.
Okay.
Our
national carrier.
Yes.
Which you are subsidizing. The issue of free and all, you raised this issue when we were having the conversations at the rollout, at the beginning, at the onset of COVID in the country. Why is it that people would then have to pay for the tests? Why would they need to pay for hospitalization? Why on earth did people even pay for quarantine? But that's another conversation. But it brings up that conversation, which is why I completely agree with the questions that you're raising. The questions that were raised in March last year, January, February last year, are questions being raised in January, February this year. There was no clarity then. There's not going to be any clarity forthcoming now. When the vaccines arrive, so what's the rollout plan? Are we going to pay? Are we not going to pay? If somebody is supposed to get a vaccine and get the second jab within 2 weeks, have you made sure that this is going to happen within the 2 weeks period? If we order another batch of vaccines and now these ones have come, first 24 million, so 12 million people have gotten it. Another batch of, 30 million, so another 15 million people need to get. How do you distribute that across the country? How do you identify who needs to get vaccinated? Then is there any risk, and this is now from a medical perspective, is there any risk so you get this 24 million and then you stay another 8 months before you get anybody else vaccinated at all.
What impact
is that having? Health risk for the country.
Mm-hmm.
So all those things, those are very many pertinent questions. And whenever you ask these questions of the people in authority, and you just get answers here and there.
So far, and hopefully they're listening, nobody has come out to answer these questions. And when we make attempts, to get these questions answered, you get all manner of things. The usual things that, the Mudosi is busy, was out of town.
Yeah.
But you're wondering, who are you working for if you cannot be available to answer these questions? But anyway, that's something else. So when I consider all of these things and what you've talked about, that you did 2 doses. You cannot afford to mess up with the rollout of the vaccine, because you can imagine this was approved for emergency use. So as it is now, we do not know what will happen if somebody misses a dose.
Yeah.
What are the health implications? Is this going to, become something else? Does it mean if they miss the second dose that they are not protected anyway after all? And so it will be,
go back to square one.
You go back to square one. So these are some of the questions that are important and some of the things that need answers. On the issue of paying, my own personal opinion is that Kenyans should not pay for the vaccine at all. We're paying taxes all the time. And we could see from what happened with people paying for the testing of the COVID testing, is that now people were reluctant to get tested. You go and hide, and what happens? People spread the disease because you don't know who should be isolated, who should be quarantined. Look at Rwanda, where testing was free. That's why they have low numbers. That's why when their numbers are high, it's an emergency, because testing was free. So people would volunteer to be tested. Isolation and treatment was at no pay. So you're more willing to participate. So in this case, if you're going to charge people to get a vaccine, that it means the people who have money will get vaccinated, and those of us who don't have anything will just hope and pray to God that
it's like with the testing.
If
somebody has the means, they will get themselves tested. Someone doesn't, they will wait for God's intervention.
Which is quite unfortunate.
As we were having the conversation with the Professor Omu Nzala the other day, a renowned virologist in the country, he said, look, this country has experience in rolling out vaccination.
Yes.
The only difference here is that we've been dealing with children. But even when it comes to children, you're dealing with their parents, who are the adults. But in terms of just organizing the logistics and say we are going to have a polio immunization campaign, it actually happens across the country.
And it happens successfully.
Successfully and free.
Yes.
Across the country. So here we are saying that, well, it's a new vaccination campaign that's going to happen. It is very easy for the government to roll it out just using the same machinery and do it successfully. The only issue here is now this time people require more information. There's all this anxiety. There's all this lack of awareness of, so what does it mean? So when I get this vaccination, does it mean that now I can stop wearing a mask or washing my hands? Does it mean I can lower my guard? There's a lot of information that should be going alongside this vaccination drive and campaign. So as the government is ordering for the vaccines from wherever it's ordering the vaccines, as it's putting together this plan, it should also be rolling out a communication. That at the same time, we'll want to know, okay, so the people who are above 50 are going to get the jab first. So I know somebody who's above 50, maybe this person is not able to walk to the health facility. How do I get them there? I know some people who are above 50, but also they have the comorbidities. Do they come first? Do they come second?
Have we considered what stops government from rolling out this kind of communication? Because let's look at things that they've done in the past. I look at the polio vaccines, or even, communication about other diseases such as, what's this disease that starts with T, the waterborne disease?
You're talking about tuberculosis?
I can't remember what it's
Tuberculosis,
called.
waterborne.
There's a
No.
waterborne
Oh, she mentioned waterborne. I
Yes.
apologize.
Okay, I can't remember, but it's...
I just had the T, and
TB.
tuberculosis came to
Came
mind.
to my mind.
I
Okay.
apologize.
So maybe it's not T, but it's a waterborne disease, and they're very clear about what the communication is, and this is for everybody. You wash your hands. You stay away from food that you don't know the source
Cholera.
of cholera. It's not T. I knew
That
it
one
wasn't T.
definitely begins with T.
Yeah, the T in my world. Okay, so cholera. So they talk about washing your hands. They talk about not touching food that you don't know how it's been washed, and it sticks in your mind because this is the communication that was sent out, and it goes out very clearly, and it goes how are they able to reach everybody. Everybody knows then what you're supposed to do in that case. Same thing for the polio vaccine. Until you know that people were coming to your doorstep to even immunize children, and until the point that everybody far and wide, there was nobody, whether rural, urban, living wherever, didn't know what it was about and who was coming to do it. So have we considered the reasons as to why this information has not come out at this point? What is it? Could it be that they're still trying to unfold the details as to what this all means?
No.
Because if you can't give out information that you yourself, number one, are not sure of, or that you do not have.
No.
Because if you know that
or you're timing it, so roll out the communication 2 weeks and then it moves straight into the vaccination.
So that you're not giving people information and they
then
still
they
have
start
to
asking,
sit with
so
it.
what are you saying?
Or so now how long do I wait? So now I have this information. So now that you've given me this, do I then present myself if I'm in this age group, this age bracket, and I know I'm not a health worker, and I know that the next group of people who are going to be vaccinated are people above the age of 50. So then what happens? Do I present myself to a health facility tomorrow? Or do I wait until there's another announcement coming out from government and says from the 14th of February, take yourself to health, show your ID. Is it my ID that I will show? Or then do
Okay, that is complete information. It's like conducting voter education.
Absolutely.
2 years before an election, and you still haven't even said, so this is what's going to happen. So you're already telling somebody, so you are going to tick, you're going to cross. You want to have that information culminating in the actual exercise.
So by the time they're getting the information, everybody knows, all right, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is where I'm supposed to go. If I fall within a particular age or another kind of demographic, this is where I'm supposed to go. And by the time you've processed that information, guess what? Vaccine is here, go. It could be that this is what they're waiting for. But I understand it's a week to February.
When you make an order such as
it's
the
a week
one
to
they made
February,
the order.
I know. But it
makes sense to me.
Yeah.
The order wasn't to some phantom organization,
No.
right? I'm certain that when you make the order, the response is when it is you can expect to get it. Because you aren't the only one ordering for it. So there is some basic understanding. Because, as we said, it's not as though the production is going to start. It is ongoing, right? Now, the question that that comes to my mind is not any of these things that you're raising, which are all exceedingly valid. It is the experience that Dr. Mercy has mentioned that we have with these things. When we were preparing for COVID, the national government did its bit and allocated a certain amount of money. The budget was a 5 billion shilling budget, allocated to the counties to do what? To increase their capacities so that in the event that we had more cases of people who are COVID positive requiring hospitalization, they are ready. We know how that went, didn't we? So, is the national government going to run this particular process, or are they going to cascade it and devolve it? Because if they devolve it, it's going to be chaotic.
No, it's chaotic. It's chaotic thinking about it. If it is devolved, thinking about it
it
already,
shouldn't
it is
even-
doing anxious
It'll
things
be
to my mind.
completely chaotic.
I think it's necessary to, in this case, it's got to be a central thing, and then now from there, in terms of the information, it has to be, because something so sensitive right now, it's got to be that way. I for sure, the government knows when this vaccine will hit the shores
They
of
know.
Kenya. They know the date that it'll come.
They
here.
know.
I want to believe that the reason why they are not giving this information out just yet is because they don't want further questions being thrown into the pot. Running around, how do I, what do I,
As
where
though the
do I go?
silence will actually silence the questions.
Of course, we know that it will not. But look, let's give an example. What happened with education? When they said, are we going to open? Are we not going to? When are we going to open? Are we not opening? October 12th, boom, everybody goes, open, finish. Are you asking questions after October 12th?
Nope.
No. You know you're supposed to go to school. Finish. Okay, when will the rest go to school? Will there be okay, we know. January 4th. Boom. Everybody go to school. Same thing they could be doing here. They know when the vaccine is coming. We already know they're going to start with health workers. We know that they're going to move then to the aged. And then we know that they're going to deal with people with comorbidities. Come, let's just say for the sake of love, February 14th, they will say it is here. These
Next
people, 1, 2, 3. February 19th, go to your nearest health center with your ID. If you fall into 1, 2, 3, go.
That's a well-functioning government.
Isn't it?
Is it in Kenya? It sounds really good.
Yeah?
But, okay. The other challenge, though, is communication-wise, all right, sorted out. And you've told people go on the 19th to get vaccinated. Are you actually likely to go and get that vaccine available? Are you likely to go and get a healthcare worker
ready
for you? Actually, Eric, ask the question this way. Here I am being pedagogic about it. Will the striking healthcare worker issue, will it have been resolved then?
By then.
By the time the vaccine comes and they're ready to go.
Because everything hinges on that.
Maybe this will be the carrot that's dangled. You know, healthcare workers, you want the vaccine, come back.
No, but you know how this government
We
works.
jab you, we
They'll
go
say
through.
there are several other healthcare workers who are tamarking. So they'll be like, we have a short
We're gonna
contract
hire
for
them.
you to go do mass vaccinations.
You know something? That may very well be the case. But are you saying that if they did that they would actually meet the need? I doubt it.
Of course not.
I doubt it.
Because it's not just about jabbing, by the way. Going
No, it isn't.
By what I'm seeing globally, where people have had
additional information.
Yes,
You need follow-up.
And then people have been having reactions, adverse effects from the vaccines. So it's not just about jabbing.
A little experience is actually important in these matters.
Not a little, a lot.
Actually, that's really the whole point. It is a lot.
So there's the other danger then of information then coming out from various pockets of people saying, I got adverse reaction here, and that information not being contained.
Exactly.
So you're already starting to vaccinate on this end, and on the other end, people are saying, no, that thing, I've heard people are doing what ABCD, and I don't know how to. So there's a lot in the air. There are very many balls up there in the air, and I think it's important then that we know this is the team that's in charge. First of all, gain the confidence of, okay, so these are the guys. This is who they are. We know them. So whatever they're going to tell us, okay, we can understand. Second thing is, we also know if I have an issue, this is how I can raise that issue. If I have concern, if I have been jabbed and I start feeling, feverish, I wake up in the middle of the night and I was dreaming of this and the other, I know what to do about that. So that then this is how we're going to manage our system. It's
but also I'm going back to the issue of collecting the data.
Yes.
Given how important this whole thing is, you also need to train your healthcare providers to collect that data.
Yes.
Which one?
The ones who will be hired temporarily.
Or the ones who will be hired.
Or the ones who will be hired on contract. Then you take a couple of days to...
Even if they were already trained and the people who are already working, if you're talking about the group of people who are on strike, believe me, you would still need to train them.
Absolutely.
You still need to.
Yes. Because if you're collecting data, and my friend, it means you will have to know who these people are.
Yep.
You'll have to know where they live. There's a whole lot of information that you need to be trained to be able to understand and to gather.
Meanwhile, there's all this other information coming about that if you have just recently recovered from COVID, you're also not a candidate for the vaccine. There's a window period that they've given you to be able to get it. Now, in terms of collecting that information, Mercy, what is your name? What is your history? Have you had COVID, etc., etc.? Will you... People who want the vaccine, do you think they will tell you that they've just had COVID?
They won't tell you.
You know... there's a vaccine. As we consider this thing, let me just go for the vaccine.
These issues are important.
And
what
by the
I
way,
was talking about, the emergency use approval. So that means this is clinical trial done en masse.
Yep.
So we have absolutely no idea how this thing will affect us.
But consider also people will have read and known that you require 2 jabs for this thing to work, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you say you go with your ID to the nearest health center. Do we have a system that will indicate that this particular person has actually received the first jab? What stops this person from going to this health center and then going to the other health center?
I get double.
And
I
get
get
Yeah,
four
so that
jabs.
now I'm set.
And-
Since I was told that you require 2 jabs, me have received my 2.
Oh, I got
Good,
4.
yeah.
I got 4.
got 4.
Somebody's
Just to
telling
be
you,
totally safe.
Come after 14 days for the second one, and you're thinking, why?
14 days.
I went here, got this one,
And I'm
I
okay.
got this one, I'm fine.
Yes.
And
in
remember,
case-
there's like a book system in health facilities. I think it's possible for you to roll that out and know. So,
Eric,
This thing
you
will
can't.
need a computer system because that book system pages get lost sometimes.
Eric,
that
even
guy
with the
is funny.
biometric system, it's a problem. I'm telling you this because it's an experience we had when it came to HIV and just basic testing. Someone gets tested here. You talk about the numbers of people tested. With the time, when you have a biometric system, you then realize this person has been tested 15 times.
the same person that you.
Same person.
Same name. They don't even bother changing their names.
No.
I
Because the
said
system-
when they were tracing people for COVID, no, we're not even talking about treatment. They were tracing people. People gave the wrong number because they didn't
Oh,
want
yeah.
anybody to come
Yep.
find them
Yeah,
tomorrow.
true.
So now can you imagine the nightmare that it will be when they're saying, have you gotten the vaccine? And you now say, no.
The jab. Or in case you have 2 different vaccines, you'll have gotten
They'll
this.
do the ink.
Then
See, that's
somebody
like
else
voting.
will come.
Ink.
Do the ink.
I'm sure there's somebody who knows how to
Believe
remove
me,
it.
believe me. If you're talking about creativity, this country, us, our people, we, with creativity,
We the people.
yes, that is a small issue.
The communication is extremely important.
But even
It
if you
is.
do the ink, Eric,
extremely
It is.
important. I mean, we can
And it should
we
start
can make
now.
a light moment of it, but it's extremely important, and it must start now. I think that because again, if they've said this is February, we're talking about, we're just a week shy of February, and letting people know that this thing is coming. Even if it's the mental preparation of the same. Even though I did give the example of schools and opening, people still had in mind that in the near future, schools were opening and there was a mental preparation that was taking place. If you know you fall into these sections of people, because this is information that's already being shared. If you fall into this section of people, mental preparation. Now, in terms of the nitty-gritty, the people who are running these operations, they themselves have to be ready. Can you imagine what it takes? Just from here alone, your brain is already whizzing. Computer system across the country. Is it going to be open field hospitals, temporary hospitals where people go get a jab? Are they going to use the already existent health facilities to get this done? We have a healthcare workers crisis in the country at the moment. Are there going to be temporary people that are going to be called in to sort this out? Or will they, by some miracle, have sorted out the crisis by the time the vaccine gets here? Who is going to be in charge? Who is going to be responsible? Are they going to set up a call center to take care of it? I mean, look at so many things that need to be worked out before you now bring in 49 million people. This is just
I
the
have a
brain work that
feeling-
needs to be sorted.
I have a feeling, just like last year, we had a conversation almost throughout the whole year about communication by the government. Communication by the government. I have a feeling in a few months' time, we'll be singing this song that we had told you.
Communicate
Communicate
amongst
to people.
yourselves first.
And in fact, starting from that point of education, right now it's just education. What is vaccine? There are very many people who are already asking online. If you check, and maybe Dr. you can actually help to just demystify this. Why do I need a vaccine if it's not going to 100% protect me from
and
getting?
what is it exactly?
Why should
What
I
is
get
it?
it if it's not going to heal me?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh,
What would you tell them?
okay. So I think chanjo in Kiswahili vaccine, we are all, conversant with that. So the whole idea of a vaccine, there are different types of vaccines, where one, you can actually get the actual bug if it's a virus, and you inactivate it completely, and then you get that so that it triggers an immune response. And an immune response in this case is, so everyone's body has what we call soldiers. So if you bring a bug, these soldiers rise up to protect the body. So it's what they form what you call antibodies, such that any other time this particular person who comes looking like this comes into the body, then these antibodies are produced and they're able to fight off the infection. So that's the whole point of a vaccine. So there are many different types where you inactivate, or you have as an active one that is not really potent, just so that it can trigger an immune response. So that in future, at any point, if you get exposed to this virus, an active one that can cause infection, then your body's immune response is able to be reminded that you've ever seen these people, this is how you respond. So the antibodies come out and it fights, and it protects you from now developing the signs and symptoms of that disease. So vaccines, we have many. From when a child is born, I think all of us in Africa have the BCG. I've always been looking for mine. I think it's usually on this side. I've never seen it. BCG vaccine, which protects against TB. You have against polio, and that's how people are able to eradicate polio. We had one against smallpox some 40 years back, and smallpox was able to be eradicated. So the whole point of a vaccine is so that there's immunity. You're not able to get the infection, and you're not able to get future infection. So the 70%, according to the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, is good enough, because if getting the vaccine means you have 70% chance of not getting the infection, it is better than not having the vaccine and being 100% exposed to the infection. So that's the whole point of a vaccine. Okay. And that's why children are routinely immunized. And all of us have gone through that immunization process for many of these vaccines.
All right. Keep it right here, because we'll continue with these conversations into the next hour. We want to say goodbye to our audience on KTN Home who've been with us from 7 o'clock. These conversations happen in the Situation Room every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Every weekday morning, you have Eric Latif, Nduoko, and C.T. Muga. And today, our guest host is Dr. Mercy Korir. She's the KTN Group Editor for Health and Science. So in the next hour, we're talking about mental health in the country. And we'll have renowned psychiatrist Dr. Frank Njenga on the line. And also we'll be having nominated Senator Sylvia Kasanga, who sponsored a bill on mental health. That is somewhere. She'll tell us what happened to it. So keep it right here. Thank you very much, our audience on KTN Home. Join us again tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. But you can tune in to Spice FM on 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, or 97.7 in Malindi.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Okay, so 2.5 minutes or so to the 9 o'clock. Remember the actual disease you were talking about?
Typhoid.
Oh, typhoid.
Oh, wow.
It's called typhoid.
When you look at our data, typhoid, amoeba, and brucella are the most commonly diagnosed infections in the country.
And people also know how to self-diagnose.
They know.
You have a tummy ache and a fever.
Amoeba.
Typhoid.
And
or amoeba.
Amoeba typhoid. And you amoeba yangu haiendangi. You've had amoeba for like 10 years. People, you cannot have an acute infection for more than a week and still be living. So if you have typhoid...
So what happens when you keep recurring with amoeba?
No, it means it is not amoeba. If you have typhoid for many years and amoeba for many years, please go to your facility and find out what is happening, because it cannot be typhoid, it cannot be amoeba.
Remember malaria?
Malaria is common.
Malaria yangu haiendangi. No. If you have it for a week plus and you're still alive and walking and laughing,
then
it is not malaria.
But it reminds me of a word we like using when we talk about compensation. We like saying remuneration. The word is actually remuneration. It's a mu, not new. Yes.
Or for
we all say remuneration. It's actually remuneration.
It's remuneration.
Yes.
I think people get confused because numeral numbers, payment.
No, it's
money.
what rolls easy on your tongue.
It's
Remunerate.
remunerate.
It's remunerate, yes.
And enumerate.
Okay.
Kizungu
More
ilikuja na
questions.
meli.
No, I speak as someone who enumerated for a long time.
Oh, yeah?
Yes.
You are an enumerator.
I was an enumerator.
And you are well remunerated for your
Yes.
Okay, keep it right here. In the next hour, let's talk about the state of all of us, especially when it comes to our mental health. COVID-19 came and it was one of those things that was a spotlight. What is going to happen to people as they deal with COVID-19, the impact of COVID-19, the lockdown, children staying at home for so long? How are our children as they resume going back to school? How are we all? How are those brothers and sisters who have lost their jobs, lost their incomes? How are we all doing? How are we all coping? And what do we need to do for one another? And what do we need from the government? This is a conversation we'll be having. We'll have Dr. Frank Njenga, psychiatrist and mental health consultant, and nominated Senator Sylvia Kasanga. Good morning. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room. It's now 9 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Today,
Traffic.
North Airport Road from 75 to Cabanas is packed. Even the service lane today is not functioning. Mombasa Road is moving very slowly today. Use the highway because the service lane is not doing you any service. Thika Road is also a parking lot. Apparently, it's not moving as fast as we'd like it to. Trying to get in and out of the CBD, interestingly enough. Coming off Kiambu Road also today. Nightmare. Very, very slow. And people have formed the usual 6 lanes where there should be 2. It's another one of those mornings, but we'll get out of traffic hours soon enough without too much pain, we hope. All right, Kuru Highway then between the Nyeri Stadium roundabout heading towards the CBD and then Westlands is also slow, but it's moving. Not at a bumper-to-bumper situation just yet. Okay, so let's get out of it safe this morning. Talk to us where you need to. Spice FMKE on Twitter. Text on 40127. Let's see how easily we can get out of traffic hour. But now about 9:30 or so.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Indeed, we also have KTN's group editor in charge of science and health, Dr. Mercy Korir. Let's begin with the day's proverb, CT.
An agama lizard in the village will remain an agama lizard in town.
Okay. An egg in the village. Mtoto ya kuku.
Will become a chicken.
Is an egg.
Will become a chicken in town. Become an omelette.
In the city.
In the city.
Hey, okay. That is the proverb for today. An agama lizard in the village will remain an agama lizard in town. Okay. So at the end of this show, we'll get to understand why CT picked this particular proverb for today.
Do we have a picture of that anagama lizard?
Of the agama lizard?
Yes.
I'll show you
The colorful one.
The
colourful
colorful
head.
Just
I've
so that
seen the one with a... I think it's
out
the
there.
one with a orange,
Orangish
blue
reddish.
head and
Yes.
a blue tail.
That's male. The female ones actually have, a green neck.
Oh.
In addition to the orange.
That's male.
We should get that anagama and we post it here so that we've learned something today.
Okay. So let's talk about the health of our people. Ndu,
Yes.
the government through the president. The president directed the establishment of a task force in 2019 in response to concerns that had been raised about the state of the citizens when it came to mental health. This task force was then chaired by Dr. Frank Njenga. They worked on a report. They presented a report, and the report was handed over to the Cabinet Secretary in charge of health. And there were a number of recommendations, which we'll talk about. Parallel to that, there have been attempts by legislators to bring forth some legislation on mental health and managing our mental health. One such attempt was made by nominated Senator Sylvia Kasanga, went through the Senate. Went through the Senate. Then it went to the National Assembly. And in the National Assembly, it entered some room. I think it's been there for a while. We'll find out what happened when it got into that room. Okay? So what is it that makes us have this conversation again today? We've been looking at what has happened in the last couple of weeks and the concerns that are being raised.
Sure. If we're looking at 2021 specifically, only in the last 2 weeks of 2021, we've seen about 11 murders having taken place by members, and these unfortunate deaths have been caused by members of the same family. So people are taking the lives of people that they love. I think that it's clear that there's a problem, and it's been said that there's been a lot of tension and there's been a lot of pressure, but it's quite unfortunate that the answer that people have is to take life away. The frustration has reached such peaks that people have said the only way that we can get out of this is to take a life. And I mean, it's quite brutal in the ways in which this has been done, unfortunately. And some of the stories that we've read just in the first few weeks of this year, the stories started to pile up towards the end of last year, even between we saw heightened cases of levels of domestic violence. And this was not just the norm of, male to female, but then we saw across board, from parents to children, from children to parents, from man to woman, from woman to man. It does tell a lot about what's going on, the pressures that have been felt as a result of the economic strain that has been brought about, yes, by COVID, or even those that were latent. And then these situations just brought them out all the more. But yes, we've seen that the way out has unfortunately been murder. And like we said, children are killing their parents. Children are killing older family members. Children are killing their siblings. Family members are deciding to take the lives. Mothers are taking the lives of their children because they're not able to fend for them anymore. Fathers are taking the lives of their children and then taking their own lives because they also cannot fend for them anymore. What is this telling? That there is a serious problem. And even before we saw the results of that pressure that was felt in the news reports that we've seen, it was clear on a national level that there's something wrong. That the pressures that are being felt is not something normal and it needs to be dealt with. Has there been attention in terms of the mental state of Kenyans? Not enough, definitely. We also had the conversation here where practitioners tell us that, in terms of the attention and the resources, and here not just about money, but resources and facilities to take care of the mental health of Kenyans have not been enough, are not enough, and something needs to be done about that. And I think this is where we saw that in July last year, there was then this attempt to say, okay, let's put this together, let's collate this and see what has happened. It would be nice to know what the results of that report actually said.
Right. So let's start off by welcoming our two guests on this particular conversation. Dr. Frank Njenga and Senator Sylvia Kasanga, good morning.
Well, good morning.
And thank you very much for joining us, both of you. I want to start with you, Dr. Njenga. You chaired this task force that presented a report to the Ministry of Health. And the task force was mental health and well-being towards happiness and national prosperity. So already there's that recognition of happiness and national prosperity is tied to the well-being and the mental health of the citizens. Then you basically had a couple of months when you were sitting and you were going around the country. I don't know whether you went around the country or you basically just spoke to fellow professional colleagues and coming up with this report. You can just tell us, how did you go about putting together this report and what did you find?
Okay. What we found was that the burden of mental illness in our country is very, very, very big. It's a huge, huge burden, number one. Number two, that the citizens of Kenya are fully cognizant of the problems that are associated, that the investments we have made as a country to address these humongous problems is completely inadequate, and that we need to invest more, not just in cash, but also in training. And fourthly, that one of the drivers of this problem is stigma and stigmatization, and the Kenyans instructed us to do something about the whole issue of stigma. How did we go about it? We didn't just sit around and talk to professionals. We traveled across the country. We've moved from Mombasa to Kakamega. We moved across to Meru, Nakuru, Kisumu. We talked to professionals, yes. We talked to police officers. We talked to teachers. We talked to Waheshimiwa, yes, Sylvia, yes. So really, we talked the whole cross-section of society. And in those four things that I have said, there was virtual unanimity. So we believe that our report is reasonably representative of the views of the people of this country.
Thank you very much for being with us, Dr. Njenga. You said you spoke to everyone. Now, I want to ask this very simple question. When you look at the sort of malpractice that happens in the highest offices in this land, and with people who have been charged with huge responsibilities from the national government to the county government, in your assessment as a psychiatrist of great repute, what would you say ails these leaders?
Oh, come on. I think you're being completely unfair to me. I had no responsibility to specifically examine our political leaders. And secondly, as a mental health specialist, I am not allowed by my profession to make comment on any person, let alone leaders, that I have not personally examined. That said, I would make a general comment, which is the fact that 20% of all people in our country will at one point or another suffer from one form of mental illness or another. There is nothing special, either positively or negative, about our politicians. And as long as we accept that politicians are just normal Kenyans, normal human beings, the propensity for them to suffer one or other form of mental disorder, whether it's alcoholism, whether it's depression, schizophrenia, whatever it is exactly the same as you or myself. But allow me not to comment specifically on human beings I have not examined.
I actually, forgive me if I sounded like I wanted you to be specific about your findings. I actually wanted a general understanding of what it is that leads people to behave in a certain way. But I specifically chose this group because they're in the public eye. And whatever they do, say, utter, has a very direct impact on the rest of the country. This is really where I was coming from.
I thank you for the clarification.
Yes.
Dr. In your report, you found, I think, is it 1 in every 10 have suffered from one form or the other of mental illness. And also there were some statistics that you presented in your report that say, for those who actually present themselves to health facilities, there was another statistic that you found about, is it 1 in every 4 that also present themselves with some form of mental illness. Just take us through those statistics.
Okay, we'll start with the simple ones. If you go to any village in Kitui, in Machakos, in Maseno, in Nyanza, Kiambu, wherever you go, and you looked at the people who are in the streets or in the market or in a matatu or in a bus or in a classroom, what you will find is about 10% of just normal people in the streets. 10% of them will have a diagnosable mental illness of one form or another. So even the viewers and listeners who are here with us today, 10% of them will have one form or other of a mental condition. Does that mean they need to go to hospital? Does that mean they need to go to a psychiatrist? Absolutely not. It just means that using the normal instruments, don't laugh, that we use that condition is diagnosable in 10%, even if they happen to be members of parliament or cajuras, whatever you call them. So the second statistic that you wanted me to address is if you go onto a queue at Kisii District Hospital and you observe 100 people in that queue waiting to see the doctor or the clinical officer in that place, up to 30% of those people waiting to see the doctor, and it doesn't matter whether it is Kisii, Meru, or wherever it is, 30% of them will have gone to see the doctor primarily because they have a psychiatric or mental health need. What does that mean? It means that a lot of people will have a lot of investigations and will take a lot of time and resources of the government trying to make diagnoses for conditions that really require a psychiatric expert, clinical officer, or psychologist. And the third statistic that we mentioned is if you go to Kenyatta National Hospital, Kiambu Hospital, Murang'a Hospital, or even Kitui General Hospital, and it's a medical ward, and you examine 100 patients in that ward, 40 to 50% of them will primarily be there because they have a mental health need of one sort or another. And the final one, I don't know whether we included this one, go to any cancer ward anywhere in this country, and out of 100 people who have chronic diseases like cancer, up to 60 of them will have a diagnosable mental health need of one sort or another. Go to a heart ward where people are being treated for heart attacks. The numbers are very similar, if not the same. Point we are making the point that just because you don't recognize them as mental health needs doesn't mean they don't exist. It means they exist, but you don't have the expertise to recognize them.
Sounds like a disaster.
No. There's a future, don't worry. I'll tell you about the future in a minute.
Okay, you wanted the government to take some action on this.
Yes. I don't speak for government, but I can speak about what has happened since we handed over the report to government on the 7th of July of 2020. A number of very, very significant developments have taken place. The first of which is the fact that now, today, as I speak to you, Mathare Hospital is a semi-autonomous government agency, what you might call a parastatal, and work on, number one, providing medicines to Mathare, number two, giving Mathare a facelift, number three, getting the whole place spruced up. That I can confirm to you. I don't know whether you can be invited to go and see for yourselves today, but that has started and is ongoing, including provision of medication. Number two, we have been shown as members of the board at Mathare land that has been given to us somewhere in around Nairobi. One of our recommendations at task force was that really Mathare was a monument of national shame, and that the only way to treat that monument was to pull it down and get rid of it and build Mathare in a different location. I can confirm to you today that process has started slowly, one might say, but really, if we don't do anything else, and the third thing, which I'm sure Sylvia will be talking about in a minute, our recommendation number 11 was that we must support the Senate initiative for the mental health bill in full. And it is my hope that during the next few weeks and months, the Senate bill will see the light of day. There are a number of other recommendations that we have, but I remain persuaded that government is serious about keeping the promises that they made about the implementation of this task force report.
Okay, so excuse me. Then Senator Kasanga, I mean, this is established very well by Dr. Njenga this morning. So, Senator, coming from a point of the law, because I mean I know that Dr. Njenga is trying to get us to relax a little bit, because maybe we're not at crisis point yet, or that we shouldn't be too worried. But it does seem worrisome enough that national government, coming from the office of a president, be concerned enough to say that something then must be put into law and practice about how this must be carried out. What are some of the initial concerns then from you and the team, Senator, when it comes to what must be done?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you again for having me. It's really quite an honor to be able to address this issue here. I love speaking about mental health because from where I sit, from the time I was pulled into it, in my opinion, it's a crisis. And actually, Dr. Njenga's report did say that it needs to be declared a national disaster, because that's the status as it is. And why it is a disaster, it's because it's an area where the government has not given focus. And I mean in terms of course, the legislative interventions, rolling out of the policies, funding. Funding is a critical issue. You know, now that we have made a lot of noise about it, right from 2018, and I want to say part of the reason why the government has taken the steps it has taken is the amount of noise now we were able to bring at a national level. We have brought this conversation to parliament level. And I think out of that, it has pushed the government now to realize that it's time that they now do their part. Because, you know, incidentally, from the time I started the advocacy work and pushing for this legislation, I have found NGOs and small groups of people working very actively in the community, you know, to help alleviate the stigma that Dr. Njenga is talking about, you know, trying to help people come to terms with understanding what is mental health. And you see, many of us don't even understand what is this mental health we are talking about. And when it is broken down and you understand that it's a state of well-being in which an individual can cope with the normal stresses of life, work productivity, and being able to contribute fruitfully to your community, then you realize it's an issue that affects even you and me and those of us who walk around thinking that we are okay, and yet maybe we are not okay. And mental health spectrum starts from, you know, everyday things just like anxiety, going all through the full spectrum, as Dr. Njenga would tell you, to very, you know, acute cases of schizophrenia and bipolar. It has a whole spectrum of it that we need to understand ourselves as Kenyans so that we can begin to deal with it. So the fact that there's not been enough education, enough communication, enough understanding of what we are dealing with as mental health, I say then it's a national disaster. Because then a lot needs to be done. And in fact, in our advocacy work, we keep saying that the work needs to be done from a family level, from a community level. You know, every aspect of mental health must be dealt with from that personal point of view, where it is the family that is involved, your immediate people who you live with, as well as the people who live around you in the community. It has to be community-based approach. And that is why the legislation then becomes very critical. I think I texted Eric and I said to him that it's an amendment bill that Senate approved and pushed. And it's amending an act that is as old as 1989.
Senator, if I can just ask you that, because you've just said something I think is important. You talked about it being a community-based approach. But if we look at how it has been practiced over time, anybody in the community who presented with any kind of a mental challenge was ostracized. So in terms of the acceptance of this being a problem, I think it's still very far from how these issues need or must be dealt with before it even gets to the national level, whereby anybody in your family who had any kind of instability was locked up somewhere or was deemed to be, you know, unwelcomed. So then how, through this legislation, are we going to make it something that will be accepted as all right to discuss and deal with? Because I think that's one of the fundamental things that you must deal with. Even if you have national legislation in place saying that the resources will be provided, how do you get people to take their loved ones? How do you get people to accept that their loved ones might have an issue before even presenting them to facilities and resources, even if we had the best in the world?
Yeah, Nduku, the beauty of our new constitution is that health is a devolved function. So the bill that Senate approved, the Mental Health Amendment Bill, actually seeks to devolve this function down to the counties, where the rubber must meet the road. It is for it's for the county governments, to put in their structures for mental health, to ensure that we have functions that go down right to the village level. Are you getting me?
Yes.
Okay. So the idea is that at the county level, at the sub-county level, at the village level, you have some form of intervention. And that is where now your community-based health workers to do with mental health begin their work from. Their work of educating and identifying and helping families, reintegrating those who are from hospital, who are from rehabilitation, helping families understand these things. There's also an aspect of education, early childhood education, which is also a function of the county government, that mental health must be incorporated in the education as well. In fact, one of the conversations we've had with the director of mental health here in Nairobi is when they are rolling out what they call their quality rights toolkit program. And I have said to them repeatedly, we need our teachers to be equipped with, some basics of mental health, where they can identify and intervene when it comes to children. Because increasingly it's becoming clear that when we intervene at an early stage, you help people such that their mental issues don't become very critical as they grow older. So an aspect of teachers being roped in, and they can become like almost what you can call frontline, because they're the first, interactors with our children. All that is encompassed at the county level. And it is for the county governments now to ensure that under their health budgets, they have a critical budget for mental health, and they have rolled out their policies for intervention. Mm-hmm. And at national level, where we'll have the national, board of mental health sitting, it's now for them, their duty to come up with the policies that then they can roll out through the county government. So when we have a structure that is that way, then you can see it is beginning to work. You can actually begin to see if every county was active with a troop of mental health practitioners down there at the county level, and with hopefully a referral system that can work. Because the other thing that the bill is pushing for is an integration of mental health into the healthcare system. So rather than have standalone mental health institutions everywhere, what you have is that every, dispensary, level 1 hospital, level 2 hospital, like Dr. Njenga is saying, as you walk in to treat you're treating whatever ailments that you have, that even the doctors can identify that maybe you need a psychologist or you need some other form of mental health intervention, that it is there in that hospital. And in that sense also, something like NHIF is also covering the interventions for mental health. So we integrate mental health intervention into the healthcare system, have a referral system that works, and that would also help us to fill the gaps that are there, the infrastructure gaps that are there, including the staffing, the practitioners, for instance. We have very few, Dr. Njeka will confirm to you that we have very few psychiatrists in the country. So we have to allow other practitioners also to begin to, to help with intervention such that by the time a critical case is reaching the few psychiatrists, there has been some intervention along the way. So if you see that structure, the way I have described it, then you can begin to see it is possible to fight stigma. It is possible to start educating people about mental health so that they can understand, and then we stop locking up our loved ones in the home.
Senator, let me ask this question. What you've said actually is very, very comprehensive, and it's clear that this is something that is dear to your heart. Does it require legislation? Yes,
it requires legislation because somehow you need to hold people accountable. And one of the best ways to hold people accountable, if there's a law that they're supposed to follow and utilize. And again, speaking from best practices, a lot of countries, again, we like to borrow from best practices. So even when we were working on this legislation with our stakeholders, we had to look out for the best practices around the world on how they're approaching mental health intervention. So legislation is important for accountability. You have to hold the governments, both at national and county governments, to account when it comes to some of these things.
Senator, allow me to ask. There are many issues in the health sector. Mental health is one of them. The Parliament has the issue on assisted reproductive technology. We have issues of organ transplant, for example. We have many issues. Don't we risk addressing health issues in silos as opposed to looking at it holistically, so that for once and for all, something concrete, something long can be done, because when we do them piecemeal and tackle a few things, then we'll have the conversation you're talking about, where at some point we'll be talking about mainstreaming these things into the health system.
Well, legislation is evolving, and you see, it's when we approach it as and when. What are the most emerging issues? What are emerging issues at that point in time? Do they require legislation? You say yes. But as a country, becomes more mature, as you grow up and more other things evolve, then it's possible to look back and say, okay, maybe we need to collapse these bills into one and reorganize and do this and do this. But for the time being, we have to deal with issues as they emerge. I believe that it's the way to do it, is the way to go. It's the way other jurisdictions have done it. And you can have as many laws in one area of expertise as need be. And then as issues evolve and as people become more mature, societies become more advanced, then maybe you can look back and say, this is outdated, let us repeal this, let's bring this together, because that also happens. In fact, as we were transitioning from the last constitution to the new one, there was a lot of repealing and a lot of merging that happened. So I believe there are times when these processes can happen, when you can look back and consolidate. But for now, we have to deal with issues as they emerge. And for me, mental health is a crisis, and it must be looked at first individually, even before you want to merge it with everything else. You must address it individually, sort it out, and then maybe in the future we can look back and say, all right, we can merge this and this and that.
Time for us to take a break and see what's happening on the roads this Tuesday morning. At 9:30, we're having a conversation with psychiatrist and mental health consultant, Dr. Frank Njenga, who chaired a task force appointed by the Ministry of Health to look at the mental health and welfare of the citizens, and they presented a report to the ministry. We're also having a conversation with Senator Sylvia Kasanga, who sponsored a bill in the Senate and it went to the National Assembly on mental health, looking at the state of mental health in the country. Keep it right here for that conversation to continue shortly. Good morning.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day. Spice up your life.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, just the way you like it.